I'm pleased to introduce Tim Van Meter with the firm Van Meter, Williams & Pollock. Tim's firm was instrumental in helping the town develop the vision for the town center site back in 2007. The process was an eight-month process and primarily involved the town board with input from the planning commission and residents of the community. Tim's firm is a nationally recognized firm with a tremendous amount of experience in transit-oriented developments, and he's here based on the board's request to give us his perspective on the vision and to just a recap on the vision that we developed in 2007.
Great, thanks. Welcome, Mr. Van Meter.
Good evening. Some familiar faces from when we started this 3 years ago, and some new faces. So it's interesting to kind of revisit something after you worked so hard. 3 years ago now, almost to the day, when we're working with the town board then to put together a vision for that. And I think we'll just quickly go through that vision. And I think what would be nice if there are questions at the time of a slide or something I'm talking about, let's go ahead and address it right then and there to make it a little bit more interactive. Otherwise, I'll just move through this quickly so we can immediately get into any kind of discussion or any kind of discussion you may have about current conditions of how things may have changed over the last 3 years. I guess I'll be speaking over here to my right. This is where we left off this master plan and this vision for, and I'll just go through a little bit for the new members and also a refresher for some of the existing folks that were on the board on how we reached that. Cheney Ferguson originally was my project manager. She's still around, soon to be a new mom, so I'll be losing her for a while, but I'll get her back. So next slide, please. When we started this vision, we worked with the board to take a very complex subject matter and try to make it simple. And part of that is really identifying overarching principles for the project, are things we talk about must-haves. And that became a filter for all of our decision-making when we created alternatives and we showed ideas that were we solving these big four principles, basically connectivity, which means are we connecting to the town at large? Are we connecting where places are disconnected? And connectivity really is talking about ease of movement. And movement, whether you're on foot, whether you're in a car, whether you're in a bicycle, whether you're on a skateboard. How easy can you move around? A mix of uses. Typically when you're talking about urbanism, you think of mixed use as something that's vertically integrated. Well, it's not just that. It's actually horizontally integrated that are in close proximity. And proximity is the key point here. That you have different uses that you can move among them without necessarily having to use the automobile. In other words, that you can walk, bicycle, again, the skateboard. Placemaking. Okay, there's the hardest one to get your arms around. But placemaking really is where you create a semblance of an environment that is the town of Superior. When you think of Boulder, you probably think of maybe Pearl Street. There's probably about 4 places in Denver you immediately start thinking about when you talk about placemaking that are unique characteristics of that certain place. And what's interesting about Superior, what we discovered, it has unique placemaking tools, basically because you have such a fabulous view of not just the front range of our mountains, but also further back towards the Indian Peaks, that it has a certain placemaking features. And it's also regional. And I say regional because you see a lot of Superior as you travel up and down 36. I do it daily either by when I'm lucky by bus, when I'm unlucky by car. But really Superior opens itself up quite a bit, specifically when you're heading towards Boulder too. You see quite a bit of it. And fourth was this concept of sustainability. And that's really building your future town so the future residents you're not discounting them, so they're not left with problems of how we typically build in the past that Cheney and I we call triage. We're constantly solving problems from past planning efforts, and the idea of sustainability is that we build for the future in mind, not just from a landscape or a town planning perspective, but right down to the buildings, right down to the materials you use. It's things that can transcend over time. people have done that well. Also, that also is directly related to 3D placemaking. When you think about timeless places, places that you can't tell quite when they're built, but it really doesn't matter. It really it has a sense of belonging. And it has that. Where is Superior? Where's that soul of Superior? And finding that. From those, we talked about connectivity. I talked about it's about roadways, bicycling, certainly multimodal transit operations. I mean, we have the super stop for the 36 corridor, not too far away from the site. But we're going to get far more transit intensive, on 36, and certainly when we finally start getting a train running all the way to Boulder. That there's got to be better and newer ways of moving around without relying totally on the automobile. The connectivity can you go back one? To the regional connections, we talk about to the regional trails, which is really neat. Something I discovered when I started working. I live in Boulder, but I didn't really discover all the trail system until I started coming out here working with the previous board. That there's a lot of places that you can connect to, but how do you make that even more of a regional connection? How do you make it more holistic in its nature? And certainly, great cities, great towns are made out of great streets, and we'll get into much more of this a little bit. Next slide, please. Mix of places, it can be office over retail, like at Stapleton. Or the upper right, you'll see offices that are mixed around a joint parking structure, a joint use parking structure downtown off Pearl Street. The lower right is housing over retail. It's a variety of uses that are coming together in proximity. So it's more about what we call as urban designers, it's more about the form of a place. Like I've got to use my hands because I'm not drawing, but you start creating sense of enclosure. You think this is a building, that's a building, there's a street in between. It's that sense of enclosure, and it's not so much what's in the uses of those buildings, but it's more about the form of how they create those great streets. And and that's where you get right back into that placemaking. So these 4 principles are all actually interrelated all the way through in this type of thinking. Next slide, please. Placemaking, we call it dense and compact. You tend to take both those terms as negatives. But that's what brings people together. That's where you get a certain mass of people together that can have interchanges, and those interchanges are social, and they can be economic, and quite honestly, they can be entertainment. And that's what we have. Down on Pearl Street again, to use Boulder for example, is a critical mass of people that come together just to watch people, and all of a sudden that creates that placemaking. It creates that social network, and it certainly creates an economic formula for the town. The Main Street's going to be a big issue here, and and we'll keep talking about that. But it's going to be a main form of creating that place. It's that third place where people can gather. And what we've heard more, in our initial talks was, where do we come together here as a town? Where is our gathering place? Is it the marketplace? Is it your original town? Where does that really come together? And where can you actually do celebrations? Where do somebody out of town, you say, I'll just meet you there. Where is that there? And we keep hearing, well, we need to create where's the there? We need to create that place that gets down to the last one about the great streets. And again, when you think about great cities, you always come back to a street, 16th Street Mall in Denver, Pearl Street in Boulder, and we can go on and on. That there's always that place that tends to be a gathering spot for a local community. Next slide, please. Next slide. Placemaking. And finally, sustainability. We throw out there a LEED scorecard. We talked about quite a bit of this on the old council. I'm sure the new council is. LEED. Someday for us as architects and engineers and urban designers, it's going to go away, and that's a great thing because then it will be the standard protocol of how we build. We don't need checklists to prove all this. All we're doing is doing this great change of how we build and build over time, and the industry is picking that up. And and it'd be great if it could be more of a carrot to do that, but unfortunately, our building industry and our policymaking industry really moves slowly, so it takes a bit of a stick. And the stick is, requiring LEED buildings. It's a great tool, but I think in about 5 years, it'll be our standard of practice. And what that means is not just about buildings, but it's really the big piece here is about infrastructure, how we handle water and water quality. Here we are in our high, dry state of Colorado. And what's really germane about this specific site is you have such a wonderful amenity in the creek that passes through the site. And you want to protect that. You want to engage that, because right now it still is a bit of a backwater. But how do you keep it as a great amenity, which is really gets down to your economic sustainable, that the place can transform and transcend over time and still be a viable economic mechanism for the city and to itself. Next slide, please. We'll quickly go through the site process we went through. Very quickly, 36, perfect. We've got McCaslin. We've got the local network you see around there. So we're starting to define the town center site here. These are called edges. We call those edges because they're very difficult to train. Thank you. Now I have to know how to use this. I won't get that opportunity. Does this work?
Hit the top.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. So we're starting to define some edges, and edges are important because without edges, you don't create enclosure. And I'm talking about enclosure on a more mega scale. Certainly, nobody in their right mind, should be walking or trying to cross 36. But there's no reason that McCaslin has to be the way it is. We talked about this at length last time. Part of that is you have the original town. Did I get that right finally? Yes. 3 years ago, I think I stumbled through that for about a year, right? I'm not getting this. Well, the original town, they should be able to transcend. A pedestrian should be able to walk across McCaslin to whatever economic activity we're putting on the site to the east of that. And it's one of critical importance because that's where you talk about connectivity of all levels. Right now, you basically have to stop at a stoplight and wait for a stoplight to change. I guess you can go under the creek. That there needs to be far more preferable ways of moving around Superior to really bring some really good bones of the original town, which is really the street grid, to the town center. Next slide, please. We certainly have a certain noise issue, basically with tires and tire squeal that come off 36, something to pay attention to. A great amenity of Cold Creek that transverses through the site. A less great amenity, the floodplain, but it's something very, very important to think about and how we edge and form that and how we address it. Significant landscaping features. What's beautiful about this particular piece of property, it has some topography to it. Topography is important because it really helps you create various neighborhoods and sub-districts, and we'll show you a little bit more about this. Detention ponds, certainly irrigation ditches, and we've got a variety of drainage happening at the site. The site kind of rolls around, so it certainly has its characteristics for fine placemaking. Next slide, please. Our analysis, we have the two larger pieces of property. Obviously, the creek bisects the north. We have issues with the highway visibility. Those are actually opportunities with highway visibility. This is what I mean when you're coming from Denver to Boulder and passing by. There's a wide variety. There's a great sequence of potential regional placemaking. Again, this could be through significant buildings and view corridors to the mountains, view corridors to open spaces and green spaces on the site. But it's a way of how you introduce a larger regional activity to the site. Next slide, please. Established neighborhoods that surround the site, built over the years. Next slide, please. And really a mix of uses. So, we talk about mixed use, but this is already around the site on a larger scale. It has a wide variety of uses, which is really fascinating. The thing is they're all disconnected from each other. And the other thing is they're all disconnected, not from just each other in the site, but they're also single-use pods. Certainly the marketplace is about retail. You got retail up here, residential, and all these things are pulled apart from each other. And the idea of the town center is to take this series of uses and actually overlay them in the middle. Next slide, please. Oh, views. Obviously, the views are outstanding. Next slide, please. Transit access up here. Next slide, please. Town center. So we had a charrette here. We went through a variety of, this is just some of our thinking, came up with a variety of ideas that were trying to engage all those different principles and trying to arrive at a not necessarily a plan, but a thinking that could sustain over time. Next slide, please. So the concepts are really one based on, when I talk about the topography and the mix of uses, so these are concepts of really of creating various neighborhoods. Certainly a commercial core up here. Commercial core because of its immediate adjacency to the marketplace over here. Commercial, it could be retail, certainly it could be office, certainly it could be hotel, conference center, maybe the ice sheet. The idea of a green buffer, again, we're just overlaying Cold Creek on there with that. So these neighborhoods, they all buffer away by a certain a level of open space or greenness around that. The urban center we've identified as probably the most mixed-use place. That it certainly could hold retail, maybe a little bit of office, but this is where we started introducing maybe a more higher density or more urban residential component. It could be stack flats, condominium, row houses, townhouses, things like that. And again, following the ridge here of looking at a green separator, and something we call that at the end of this process an urban neighborhood. That would be of a lower scale and lower density. That could be small single-family homes, townhouses, and carriage homes and things like that, with the exception of maybe a senior housing component over here. They're really working these three components together. That obviously what's going to tie them together is a network of circulation. That could be streets, paths, and things like that. Next slide, please. Parameters, certainly a dead-on view of Longs Peak. If you guys have been out on the site, today you may not see it, but tomorrow morning it could be spectacular. It dumped about a foot up there today. But there's again, my drive homes daily, right on 36, it aligns exactly with it. So it became kind of a form determinant, again, about this more regional and placemaking capability of the site. Of looking at a buffer along the highway. In other words, what are we going to put there that could sustain the highway right next to it? What kind of uses? So the first thing you probably take out maybe is lower density residential. It's not something you would put adjacent to a highway. You can put higher density there because your construction types change from wood to concrete or steel, which helps quite a bit from noise mitigation and things like that. Next slide, please. Circulation and traffic through the site, actually having a few major connectors. A little bit larger streets. We're definitely going to accommodate the car here that do some of the major connectors. Next slide. Creating some special places. Basically, we talked about this. I'm still struggling with it. The idea of a gateway. Everything's a gateway, but how do you actually create something special when you do exit 36? You do exit 36. You're coming from Louisville, but there's something here. There's something here that says you're in Superior now, and there's probably a multitude of ways of doing that. But one of the most important ways of doing that is being able to accommodate the pedestrian, that you can actually move across this intersection in some manner. So it was kind of demanding some landscape treatment, but we talked about this maybe in conjunction with some traffic calming and placemaking features along McCaslin. Certainly, the great amenity site, Cold Creek here. This is where we talked about this Main Street. And we talked about it in more of the mixed-use village here. Next slide. Hilltop Park, and then here's the tallest part of the site. Again, it's a meandering landscape, but up here you actually get up above the entire site. So it's kind of like a belvedere where you're able to look out over the original town, certainly, all the mountains, but this is a place that you could actually look out across the whole thing. And it's probably a place that should be left unbuilt upon, so you can actually use it as a park, and that is more of a public place to view the view overall of Superior. Next slide, please. And then connections to the existing communities, whether they are streets or paths, that there are second means of egress on the way out. Design alternatives. Well, we took out all the alternatives because we want to get to the discussion. But anyway, this is where we arrived as a master plan. I'll just quickly go through this so you can see. We tried to, I know I'm going quite quick, but of how we laid it together. We talked about this as the commercial core. where you would have maybe a larger degree of retailing that would happen up here. And a critical component of that would be something called shared parking, where you actually create a potential parking district. This is what the City of Boulder does so well downtown, is that the individual lots, if they are parceled off as individual lots, aren't encumbered with parking. You actually have a parking district where where all the retailers can park in, where the employment can park in, where maybe a potential hotel can park in. And what that does is frees up the land for development, and frees up the parcels for development around here. We talked about, certainly we have a fairly significant piece of infrastructure needing to cross Cold Creek in a bridge, in an automotive bridge here, but also a potential something of more celebration-like of a pedestrian bridge here that now connects into the larger Main Street section here. This neighborhood being the highest density neighborhood, but need not be more than 3 and 4 stories, where you could have a ground floor retail at this direction here with housing on top, and again with various housing types over that. We at this time, during this discussion, we actually programmed out and laid in a 2-ice sheet rink or hockey facility at this point here, and looked at that potential location. And then transcending over the hill, coming over here to a lower density neighborhood of townhouses, row houses, maybe live work, maybe some small lot, single family here with its green buffer before it hits the existing single family up the hill at this location, with a larger senior complex right here. And again, there's that Belvedere place. There's, when I showed that on the plan, the high spot of a potential park there. We locate some ballparks down at this end, and again, because of their adjacency to 36 here, coming through here, and then our larger site retainage places here and up here, and then connecting some of those historic trails all the way through. I think we looked at a community garden, a terrace community garden here. Just a lot of ideas were spilling out. And the key to coming to something like this is really how it phases over time. And I think that's changed a little bit from 2007, so that's something I'd like to talk about.
I'm just curious, how does the cemetery fit into this layout?
Cemetery sits up high. So, the cemetery, this is actually, you see all the green here, that's actually a pretty steep slope coming on down. So we try to keep, or at least plan for the topography to stay in place. So, a cemetery is a good in that neighborhood. It's a good neighborhood, is that they don't make any noise. It's your constituency, right? The less aspects of it do you really want to overlook it all the time? So it does sit up high here. So we ringed it at the low edge of the landscape with the road right here, but we pretty much left it alone. We didn't build right up to it. We didn't plan right up to it, mainly because of the topography.
So it's not incorporated in some sort of historic
It could be.
meaning?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Oh,
it could be programmed, absolutely. It is a significant green space right here. Absolutely could be programmed in. Maybe trails up there and interpretive exhibits and all that, absolutely. But it wasn't, again, we didn't bring buildings on there, or roads, or, all the things that we probably shouldn't do, but I think your point's a good one, and if there is a trail network coming through here, can it be part of that? Can it be part of a larger thing? And then we had a lot of discussion with the lower area. I'm going to put that down. But the lower area. So we were requested to take a look at the back 40, as we call it. And I'm just going to come right up here. That we were asked to relook at this piece for a larger commercial component here. Basically, something you call flex office space. That it could be light manufacturing, it could be office and things like that. There was some angst about the potential of single family here adjacent to here, and so we looked at what that would look like. So basically, instead of overlooking single family, you have a fairly high degree of parking down here because you're not really transferring to development before you hit the larger kind of flex office facility.
Could you do me just
into the neighborhood.
I'm sorry, just a quick favor, which is if some people might be watching this, if you'd be just slightly closer to the mic, I'm sorry.
I'm breaking
I'm
rules.
the enforcer, sorry.
Okay.
Try that one. It looks like it's good batteries.
Uh-oh. Jane, how do we work this? All right. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No problem, thanks.
So it's really about looking at this piece right here to become a more of a commercial piece. One of the things that we found about this when we were doing the initial transportation impacts of what goes where is that you have when you have an employment piece, you have quite a bit of more traffic conditions or more cars that are coming in and out. And one of the things that is germane about the site is we don't, even though we've planned a nice network throughout the site, we don't have a lot of ways in and out. A controversial way here or down, further down. So we weren't real keen, really from a transportation perspective, about the concept of commercial being located down here. Hence, that's where we went with the lower density residential in the first scheme. So the implementation, next slide. When we look at this as a phasing, and this is 2007, things were looking pretty rosy then. There was a lot of activity going on, probably too much activity, a lot of activity that shouldn't have happened. But really, you've got is building upon successes. And with the marketplace right here is building, the retail or commercial component first. That would come in with that. And so there's two things. It's building on success, but also working on adjacency, and also all of a sudden we're engaging McCaslin. We're creating that placemaking, or we're taming, or we're allowing pedestrian orientation to come across here. Because all of a sudden you're building on successes, so a multiplicity of things happening. Maybe get the bridge in here and find another way coming back out. So you start setting a pattern for future development to come in. Very rarely will you have a plan like that where one developer is going to build this. You tend to find people that do commercial very well. And that's broken in two. There's office guys and there's retail guys. The more difficult part is the mixed-use piece. There's not a lot of people that actually mix uses. I think that's all changing now with the shaking out of our real estate industry. That there may be, in the near future, people are more apt to take on these things in different lending conditions. Part of this was building on successes of putting in the pedestrian bridge. So now we're building complete neighborhoods. This neighborhood now with the main street that's married with the commercial neighborhood. Next phase, please. Then building out this neighborhood that's built on the success of this. So now you have a whole neighborhood that's complete. Next slide, please. Then coming back down and building out the lower density neighborhood down here. So we're constantly extending the street network, the infrastructure, and all the things. They all start building upon each other. Back to and the last piece being this, which is wide open what that wants to be, whether it's a mid-rise office component or a mid-rise housing component. But it's really probably one of the last things that's going to come in because it's adjacency to 36. But also if it's one of the higher intensity uses that's building upon successes of the successes of the various real estate components that come before it. Next slide, please. And there's Long's right there. And this is kind of looking over, just as a general massing exercise, looking over the whole thing from the Belvedere back over here, really moving from 1 and 2 story to 2 and 3 story to probably 4 story here, and with a larger scale of buildings adjacent to 36. So why don't we go back to the plan and then we'll open it up to the discussion for you guys.
Let me ask you one question. So you obviously have noted that things have changed over the course of the last 3 years. And when you've looked at this, do you have, from your perspective, things that you think might need to change?
Yeah, I do. It's one of the. We've had some discussions with a couple of development entities that came in and looked hard at the site. And land assemblage continued to buxel both of them. Of being able, one of the things we talked about was one overall master developer for the site. And our real estate consultant, Mary Lee Utter, was very adamant about that, and rightly so at the time. I think that needs to be more flexible now. It's a big bite for somebody to take on all 160 acres. If the city encumbered that 160 acres or owned it, that's different. But when you have multiple people to try to acquire the land, I think that became difficult. The other thing we talked about is, the hardest thing to make successful is the retail component of it. And, again, from the time of the completion of the plan and talking with multiple, interested people on the project and just general knowledge that we gain from the project is the residential seems to be a very strong component. That when there is lending again, that's probably one of the very first things that will go. The retail may be the last. We talked about the Highway 36 corridor. Another project we're working on, the Westminster Mall. We're looking at 1 million square feet someday there. That the corridor is getting over retailed. So it may be asking a lot, not necessarily for this component, but the Main Street component, which is really one of the key must-haves. So I think we need to look harder at what that could be, and maybe letting it transform over time. When I'm saying transform is maybe that ground floor use can initially be residential as long as it's designed for future transition to commercial. It'll acquire a patina over time, until it really wants to be that. So I think flexibility is a key. I know, there was a group that wanted to start here right away, but how do you start down here when you've got a fairly amazing infrastructure to get you back out? Those are tough issues here. So, yes, ma'am.
When you finish your thought.
Oh, you'll instigate a new thought in me, so go ahead.
I think we're very strategically situated between Boulder and Denver.
Yes.
And I do believe that transit, as part of this whole entity, is very important a delivery mechanism to Boulder, delivery mechanism to Denver. And I'm a little troubled that our RTD facilities are actually up here rather than integrated as part of this complex. So I would like your thoughts on that piece.
It's a critical piece. We did not, we weren't able to spend enough time. We thought up here we may want to improve right along here a really great pedestrian network and bicycle network and go under McCaslin. Because right now it's really hard to get to your bus facility. It's very difficult. The way the buses work is they don't want to travel inland away from 36. They want to get on and get off. It works remarkably well for buses. It just doesn't work well for people. It's really tough to move the transit facility. So here you have this thing versus trying to arm wrestle its way in here and back out. I think that would be a viable option for you if you had a major arterial street grid, and you don't. The major problem with the site is its lack of connectivity regionally. I mean, really, we have McCaslin, and that's about it. You can't, we're not finding another interchange on 36, right? I mean, that's just something that probably will not happen. And unlike if this was a grid of your typical half mile or an arterial, I think you could entertain those discussions. But it is kind of it's a disconnected piece, so it's a tough discussion. But I don't think it's impossible to encourage. I think we're changing that half-mile radius came to about right here. Is that correct? So what we believe, and I really truly believe this for Coloradoans, the half-mile radius. You always talk about a 5-minute walking radius, which tends to be a quarter mile from transit. Most people will walk. Half-mile people walk if it's pleasant. So we can walk all day in here because we know we can make it pleasant. The key is this connection right through here or right across here and coming on up. And that's why we put that as the opportunity place right here, because somehow we have to make that comfortable and lively. And it's not an impossible task, but it's not in the middle of your site. So I struggle if I would call this transit-oriented development, but I think you can capture a majority of the population activity of the site that could have that option of using that bus facility if it was pedestrianized.
Other questions?
Yes, sir.
The four design principles, it seems like those they would make up the identity of our town. And when you designed this, was there a specific identity in mind? And how do you see this town being viewed if this were complete?
Well, that's a great question. That's a great question. I go back to two key pieces of being viewed, and that's kind of an outsider coming in. One is we talked about what does it look like since a majority of people, traveling to the site here, at least to the marketplace, are coming by car. At this point, that there's a way of placemaking or wayfinding there. You're entering somewhere special. The other one is this whole quarter. It's low right here. What I mean by low is you're traveling here and you look across this whole thing. It rises up at the cemetery. You lose it, and then it opens up right here real quickly. So you're going to be able to look right into the site. And part of that is keeping some great, view quarters. Down maybe some of these streets and down the watercourse way that you see you see beyond just the building. You're actually seeing a street and a neighborhood come together. So the thinking here was that we would open up we'd constantly try to protect the views west. And I'm thinking regionally, as you're traveling up and down the corridor here that of the views west. But also, if there was a way, here I'm breaking the rules again, if there was a way of crossing, and not necessarily with streets, but with some kind of pedestrian crossing, so the folks here in the original town, and someday this is going to get redeveloped, who knows what, but that it becomes part of this seamless integration back in. So it's a place you can move around easily. Right now it's difficult to move around Superior. So that was kind of more the overarching thinking. I'm not sure if I answered the specific question. I mean, we didn't really think of a theme architecturally or anything like that because the town's not old enough for that. What you have is this kind of regional view of the mountains, which I think is incredibly powerful. So one of the issues there, that I talked about was this. This is a very important. I mean, right now this is our internal circulator all the way through, or coming back out. That this is right on line, with Long's Peak. You never interrupt it. It's always there as you're moving around the site. So they're orientating devices, so you kind of always know where you are within the neighborhoods. So it's really one of finding your way around easily with certain marks.
In terms of the ball fields, are those intended to be competitive, large enough to be competitive teams play there, or are they community-oriented?
I think, the scale of those things, if I change, you can correct me. Yeah, I mean, they're community-oriented, so they're probably, they're not
Okay.
large ball fields.
Okay, because I was trying to make the traffic patterns work if they were intended to actually bring people from outside Superior into Superior. Okay, so no problems there. I've lived a number of places, and the town of Superior actually, I believe, has just such a great history. A lot of, I live in Rock Creek, it's a bedroom community, and one bedroom community is like another one, but they're not all situated next to this historic place called the town of Superior with its historic coal mines, et cetera. And so as we look towards visioning for ourselves and how we want to capitalize off our past to create our future, I think that offers some intriguing possibilities. Any thought given to tying those together?
Yeah, there was, if I'm correct, a really passionate person that sat with us, from the city that made sure we kept that in sight. And that was the genesis of a lot of this development here that could connect on, to some of the more, again, these regional trail connections and all that. And again, we talked about, signage and place markers and benches where you could actually learn about some of the history. And so the idea of bringing that on through and maybe up to the cemetery, I think, is really kind of a neat idea too. So I mean, it's something that is I think could be easily incorporated. But obviously, we never got to that kind of detail. This was kind of an overall vision plan, and we talked about, setting a series of design guidelines at one time as a critical next step for the project. When you do have folks coming on in, there's a great amount of predictability, both from the private market side who may be investing, but also from the public side that they're actually implementing what is written, or what the intent is. And part of that may be the whole programming of the the kind of more cultural and historical sequences I think you're alluding to. Yes, sir.
One of the more difficult things I wrestle with, not just with this concept, but any development, is the already somewhat vexing traffic problem we have with our interchange of 36 and coming up and down McCaslin. And tying that in with the concept of taming McCaslin, I really think that's going to be a real challenge to not have ourselves in a gridlock. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Just personal thoughts. I've been, I've ridden my bike up through here now that I discovered quite a bit more. Had no problem coming from my meeting in Arvada and driving at whatever speed I wanted to McCaslin. It's built for speed. There's no reason you have to drive 65 miles an hour when it's posted 45. I mean, I haven't seen it. I hear about it, but I haven't seen it. And those are difficult choices that I think any place has to make, what they want to prioritize. And I don't mean to say that cars are bad, because they're actually quite good if they're utilized properly. The thing is that how do we make it? How do you make them equal partners? Pedestrians, bicycles, and cars as equal partners. And right now, all the standards, and certainly your standards, they're unequal. It's all about the car. So it's not bringing one down, it's bringing the other one up. And I think what you'll find, especially if you do have infill housing and the placemaking capacity, that you'll find people moving around just fine. Because it'll be a choice network whether if it does get congested, bicycling or walking will become a prevalent activity, as it is in most fine cities. So, there are choices that there may be a level of service reduction in one, but a tremendous level of service increase in the other. And most places, struggle with that because of they do have to change some codes or standards from that. So, that's professionally. Personally, you can drive very fast in McCaslin. Because
I know you can. But until you get to the interchange.
Well, yeah. No, it is. We don't have great connectivity in the area. That's a drawback. There's no doubt about it. But it's also a phenomenal piece of property in Boulder County. So it has some really good things going with it too.
Other thoughts from the board? Well, thank you very much for an excellent presentation, as always.
Thank you.
Now, if you could just go out and build that would be fantastic.
We'd love to. It's a strange time, yeah. Again, it's the private industry is going to change. What's nice, you don't catch me saying this too often, but what's nice is I think as a board or as a town, that you do have a flexibility of being patient to get it right. And that's actually a blessing at this time, because I think our industry is retooling. And what's going to get built here in 2015, 2012, whenever, is going to be a lot better than what will get built here in 2008. Because it was in a hyper build mode when we were planning this in 2006, 2007, and we weren't building well, quite honestly. But we've learned so much because we were able to slow down. I'm talking about industry wide. So I think it's an enviable position if patience can win out, because you'll find better players that create better buildings in a better place. So
Very
thank
good.
you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. Brings us to the review of the agenda items.
So for the November 8th meeting, right now we have the minutes, the final reading of the ordinance for vendor fees, which is Chapter 4 of the code. We We have our public hearing on the 2011 budget. Public hearing on the Clearwire Wireless Final Plat Site Plan and their lease agreement. Got scheduled the Chapter 16 Land Use Code, although things are getting a little crowded on the 8th, so may or may not have that. Got the Fourth Amendment to the Calmonte Subdivision Improvement Agreement for the Caslon Street. That's the street that's not yet built on the commercial portion of the property.
So can you go over the details? I think that we required that they build it within a time certain, is that correct? And this is,
Yeah, the letter of credit is through December 31st, 2010. They came before the board last year, if you'll remember, and they had I think, an extension through 2012, but the board wanted them to come back annually for the request if they weren't able to build the road by December 31st. So they, there's, the bank has the property now, and they're marketing it to developers. So they are now requesting that an extension for another year be allowed so that they can hopefully get an agreement with the developer and they can proceed on the build out of the residential and any possible plans for the commercial.
okay, thanks.
An agreement for tennis pro services, resolution for the, I should say, Economic Development Committee, and I have scheduled the resolution for committee appointments. We can have discussion on that if you want.
Hey,
And
Matt,
that-
If I may, on that, I'd rather discuss this when we get back together as a retreat, as a board.
Oh, okay.
Retreat,
Sure.
because the recent developments, it's much different than what was currently or originally proposed to us. So I'd like to have an in-depth discussion with the board.
Okay. All right.
Just in terms of the committee appointment, so I was going to bring this up, but it seems like this is a logical point. So we published all this and put out notifications for people, and I think where we're at, well, you can tell me.
Right. So for the Planning Commission, we received no applications, but we did contact the lady who was interviewed last time, and she's still interested. For ARCCAC, we have 2 vacancies. We received 1 application. And then for ProStack, we have 1 vacancy and received 2 applications. And both formally applied for ProStack last time. So that's kind of where we stand now on those.
Okay. So the question for the board is whether or not you want to wait any more for additional applicants, or if we should just move forward. So we
I think
don't.
we should move forward.
Move forward.
Okay. So sounds good.
And then the last item on there is work session on the Waterford Street discussion. So we met with Rita Dozell, who's the HOA president. Our staff did over the last couple of weeks and had discussions. And I think it's time for it to come forward to the board. So we'll prepare information for you and invite them and have a discussion at that time.
Great. Thanks. Weekly digest.
We had the Mustangs Coat Drive on Sunday. That's usually a pretty good turnout. I haven't gotten any numbers on that, but it's something we do annually. We've done for the past few years. The tip application, we received notification from Dr. Dog that was denied, which, yeah, what kind of was surprising at how quickly they got back to us on it, but the interchange, which we'll have further discussion on tonight. And then, the last thing I guess I'll mention is the Kuffner Memorial. We had review with Historic Commission on that. They gave us their input and be soliciting input from ProStack and bring that forward for the board's consideration.
Great. Anything else?
Any questions?
Questions? Okay, so I guess we'll have an 8-minute break before the meeting starts. Thanks. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees and the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors for October 25th, 2010. And Phyllis, if you'd call the roll.
Mayor Andrew Muckle,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elia Gregoris,
Here.
Trustees Joe Sorelli,
Here,
Chris Hansen,
Here.
Sandy Pennington,
Here.
Lisa Skumatz,
Here.
Deborah Williams,
Here.
Interim Town Manager Matt Magley,
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry,
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Harden.
Thank you very much. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes.
Trustee Pennington and
I
Trustee
would like,
Williams?
I would like to pull 70E.
7, which? E. Okay. Trustee Williams?
And I did that.
And a ditto. Okay. Any other? Yes.
Yes, on the minutes, I have a correction on the minutes, but then also I'd like to pull C, D, F, and G.
C, D, F, and G. So, okay. So for the minutes, is it something that it's a typo, or is
I
it?
think so, yeah, I think it was just a
then
misunderstanding. I had thanked groups and people for their participation in our events that we had at El Dorado, and I said thank you to RCAC, and it came out, I guess, as Mark Hack. And I think Mark Hack moved away a long time ago.
Yeah. All right. So I'll just, unless there's anything else, yeah.
No, that's it.
Okay. With those changes, I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Skumatz to approve the agenda. Second. Trustee Williams, further discussion. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to reports, questions, and issues. Trustee Pennington, would you like to start?
Just wanted to raise the issue again of the date for the retreat.
Yeah, Phyllis and I talked about that before the meeting, and after she went through the minutes of the last meeting and heard everybody's schedule for November, it looks like the first day in November that works is the 29th. Wow. So
Is that after Thanksgiving?
That's after Thanksgiving week. So she's going to send an email around.
Okay. Okay. Other than that, a number of us attended the Traffic and Safety Committee meeting this afternoon at El Dorado K8. I'll let somebody else address it in more detail, but it looks like we're actually arriving at some potential solutions to the traffic situation up there. Dr. Cog, I attended last week with Deborah, and she being the primary, I'd like her to give that update. That's all.
All right. Trustee Gregoris.
With Trustee Williams and Pennington, we attended the Traffic and Safety and Transportation Committee. Kurt, did you want to come up here and maybe share like 2 or 3 minutes of what the initial steps we're taking for El Dorado K through 8? Your suggestions, if you don't mind, just so everybody can
Sure.
hear. And
Public
very
Works
brief.
Director, thank you very much.
some initial immediate steps that we can take.
Good evening, Kurt Coar, the Public Works Director. We met about a month ago with the principal and some of the crossing guard staff, TSC committee, and a few other of the parents, and talked about concerns there. From that point, we took some ideas and did some traffic counts and kind of determined, to put it simply, that basically all the kids are crossing the street at the place where most of the cars are turning into the school. So we've discussed some ideas to kind of do some restriping of the crosswalks and direct the kids in a route that kind of takes them away from most of the traffic. And it basically sums up how we'll start out, and then it could grow from there. Our next step right now is to meet with the BVSD staff and confirm if they want to go forward in this path and take it from there.
Okay. Thank you. You're welcome. Anything else, Trustee Gregoris? Trustee Williams?
I also went to the Transportation and Safety Committee, and I was just going to add that we do need to get BVSD and the town and some parents involved together, just kind of bring all the different ideas and entities together in order to move forward. That's kind of a key component. If we want to make any kind of changes, BVSD needs to be a part of it. So just thought I'd throw that in. I also went to a Dr. Cog meeting last week, and it was our quickest meeting we'd ever had ever. So I don't have a whole lot to report other than we adopted the 2011 Dr. Cog budget. And we also attended a Robert's Rules of Order meeting, which is a book written many years ago regarding parliamentary procedures. And there were a number of really good and important things to learn from that. And that's about it.
Okay. Let's see, I had brought up the committee issues earlier, so at the board's direction, I'll make some recommendations about appointments then for the next meeting, so that should be coming up then. The only other meeting I attended had to do with the US 36 corridor. There was a discussion about the TIFIA loan process and how much revenue might be generated off the tolling in the managed use lanes. That's a work in progress, and there's not more information about it right now, so I'll keep you apprised. Trustee Skumatz.
Okay, I attended a meeting of the Colorado Municipal League policy group that I mentioned last time. I sent everyone the notes, so sorry for not doing that till today. And the other thing that I attended was the Consortium of Cities meeting. And the Consortium of Cities meeting had two main elements out of it. One is a review of some planning that's happening for transportation within Boulder County. We had, when this came up quite some time ago, the Superior is basically not very integrated into it, and so it wasn't clear that there was a lot of interest in dedicating staff time to attending meetings for which Superior would rarely be engaged. However, we are out of that. We turn out to be the only person, I think, the only town without a representative on it, and so we may want to rethink that decision, whether it ends up being staff or whether you don't have time and you want someone else to do it. I think we might want to revisit that decision or that thought. They're having some, I think, 4 meetings. They've had 1 meeting so far of this planning committee, whatever. It might be worth attending. The next thing that was discussed was the Consortium of Cities has undertaken a legislative agenda starting last year, thinking that if there are things on which all of the communities within Boulder County can agree, then that makes it a stronger lobbying position. And so last year they were successful in getting some of the things that they wanted to move forward to get passed, including some cleanup of the climate smart loans, which turned out to be useful for one part, but they didn't clean up the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac thing. So in any case, you control what you can control. And then they also got solar gardens and something else moved forward. This year they've been asking for ideas of what communities within Boulder County might want to see move forward, or what they've been hearing rumblings about around the state, and whether or not Boulder County would want to weigh in on that, or the consortium would want to weigh in on it. It's only in the ideas stage. 5 or 6 or 7 ideas were thrown out there. A couple of them recycling related, and only mentioned because I knew what was going on sort of around the area. One related to whether there will be some recommendations regarding local tax structure because of a state tax study tax structure study that's going on at the state level.
Right.
Something about taxes on services. Other ideas were constitutional reform on how initiatives and ballots get put in place, a few things like that. So they're asking the communities to think about whether there are particular things that they want to forward, and so I'm asking you to think. That's it.
Great, thanks. Trustee Sterling.
I'm going to be gone 2 weeks.
I attended a ribbon cutting of the connection of the from the Marshall Mesa Trail to Single Creek Trail along with trustees Hanson and Pennington. It was a beautiful day and a great event and a significant event. I'd like to thank our town volunteers and ProStack and OSTAC who also were at the ribbon cutting and were very influential in seeing this come through. And I find it particularly exciting because it's just an important link in, we talked in the work session about connectivity, and it's just another link of Superior's connectivity, not only to Boulder, but throughout the entire county now. And Boulder County Open Space, working with us, are going to help us complete the connectivity of our, from Singleton up to Colton, and pretty soon we'll have a 13-mile loop around that way without having to get on a road. So thanks to everybody involved and concerned, and it's pretty exciting.
Very good. Trustee Hanson.
Yeah, the ribbon cutting was great. I got a chance to run on the trail on Sunday, and it was nice. I ran down to the second bridge, so it was a really, really nice trail to run on. Wanted to recognize Austin Jensen, the Eagle Scout candidate who did the disc golf park. He actually just got his Eagle Scout last Monday night. There he is right there. Congratulations. I also attended ProStack meeting last week. Susan Bauer and Dick Marin from Saddlebrook were in attendance. They're extremely happy with the reservoir being filled up. They noticed that there was a red mark on the valve, and they're wondering if it's actually going to be filled up all the way to the red mark. They're very gracious to everybody who participated in taking action, and they specifically pointed out Trustee Williams for all of her support. They also commented on 3 parks, and they said that they were very excited, and a lot of the Saddlebrook residents are excited about 3 parks, but they wanted to make sure that it was going to be better than Louisville's park. And then we also discussed at the ProStack meeting the meeting coming up with the board, and we should have a full group there with maybe the exception of 1. So they're all looking forward to it.
Good. Thank you. Ms. Harden, anything from you?
A couple of things. The dinner with the county commissioners on Wednesday night here at Town Hall, 5:30, and the ProStack meeting with the board on November 1st at 6.
Very good.
Oh, and then the election on November 2nd.
Oh, there is that election thing. Right.
Please vote.
And I think I got 3 calls today saying if my mail ballot didn't go in today, it didn't go in, so. Yeah.
Mr. Magley? No. Ms. Carberry?
No, thank you.
Okay. That brings us to item number 5, public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items.
English Hopkins, 1661 Egret Way. So you all already know about Saddlebrook, or the reservoir, it sounds like, since you updated them. It looks really nice. And I think it might be going to the red line because it's pretty close to it, and I'm assuming that's their marker. I asked them if they would create a big marker that we could see so that we kind of could gauge what was going on. So that's what's at the reservoir. And I actually have another issue that I'd like to bring up. It's regarding the parks that's going between the Horizons and Saddlebrook. And everybody at Saddlebrook's really excited about it. Or a lot of people that I've spoken to have said they're really excited about it. The only issue that's come up is parking. And I know that that you all have been going back and forth between the number of spaces there. And I am concerned because, or I would like to see all of the spaces there, because what I have noticed in the past and currently is that people, whether they live at Saddlebrook or not, will park. There's a section of parking spaces, I think there's about 17 of them outside of the gates where people can park. And then they cut down a hiking path. And
Are you talking about along the roadway?
It's on Enterprise, yeah. And so I'm concerned that people are going to go over there and park if the parking down below is filled and use that as a shortcut, which then there's the issue of trespassing because it's private property, and we ticket everybody who parks there longer than a certain period of time and tow them. So it could become a big issue of animosity and problems down the road. So I would just love to see at least 44 parking spaces, or the maximum number that you all are considering. And that's it. Thanks for everything.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Steve Smith, 653 Eaton Circle. I wanted to thank the town. The Parks and Rec have responded to Mustang football in a phenomenal way. It's been very positive. So I don't know what changed there, but it's been a very proactive situation, and we meet every other week now discussing things and how we can help each other. I also wanted to bring up the same park that is in the neighborhood been dubbed the dog park. I hear a lot of support for this park, and I think that the town, when we consider this park, is not to consider it the dog park, but consider it about all the kids and what they're going to gain from this. I see so many kids that sit around and watch at the gates of Mustang football that seem to me like they're out. So we've invited them to play football with us, but I see this park as a great opportunity for these children to get out there for the bicycling and get out there for the Frisbee golf and whatever else we can do to keep them from loitering down a Safeway, because nothing good can come from that. So when you consider this, I would ask you to consider wisely that this is far beyond just a place for the dogs, that this is a place for the kids and a good community idea. So I'm in great support of it personally, and I'm in support of it because I would love to make sure that the Mustangs in 3 weeks, when they're done, have a place to loiter that might be a little more productive. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Additional public comments? George? Okay. With that brings us to item number 6, which is presentations, which we don't have any this evening, and then to the consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, I believe, is approval of the minutes of the September 27th and October 11th Board of Trustees meetings, the acceptance of the minutes of the Open Space Advisory Committee and the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee meetings, and an adoption. Was C? I was losing track. Is C was pulled also?
C, D, E, F, and G.
Okay, so that's it. So that'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Trustee Skumas, second by Trustee Kirkouris for the discussion.
I have
Trustee Pennington.
a bit of discussion. I'm going to continue to repeat this ad nauseum if necessary. September 27th minutes, when we heard the Bennett case, we had 3 very articulate explanations against, for the transfer of, the allowance of the transfers of SDFs from, a couple of them from trustees who were on the board at the time the original water and sewage programs were established, and because of how we do the minutes, the essence of their comments was not in there. It just said public comments from those folks. And again, because I view these as a historical record of the minutes, I strongly encourage that we change to a system that details that type of comment. So I will be opposing the September 27th minutes because of those omissions.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? So, Hanson's really Skumas,
I'm in favor of everything except the September 27th minutes.
There's only 2
I don't know how to do that, so Williams, Gregouris, and opposed is Pennington. Okay. That brings us to what was consent item number C, adoption of a resolution approving the 4th Amendment to the 4th Interim Agreement for the Windy Gap Forming Project for Superior Metropolitan District Number 1. Trustee Hanson?
Yeah, the concern comes up for our investment in this. There was an article in the Daily Camera on Thursday, and there's 2 groups that have concerns about this project. One is the Division of Wildlife. The other is Colorado Trout Unlimited. And there's a concern that if this is implemented, that the flow of water down the Colorado Big Thompson will be impacted. And anyhow, if there's any issues moving forward, how is our investment in this going to be preserved if they say, wait a minute, we're not going to move forward with this? They're claiming that it's going to be not till at least next spring that they're going to make a decision on this. And what happens if they make a decision that they don't want to move forward in the manner that's been proposed?
So they being the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District, or?
Yes. based on the findings of the Division of Wildlife, or the claims of the Division of Wildlife and Colorado Trout Unlimited. They also said that if it were approved, that, and it didn't turn out to flow like we had thought, that they would expect to have mitigation measures implemented. And if we do have those, again, how does that affect us down the road after this is already in place?
So I'll let the attorneys speak to this. You know, I think that they're in the process of the environmental impact statement, and perhaps it's already done. I don't know. And if it,
Finalizing the FEIS.
so it's final.
Well, they're going through the process.
They're going through the process. So those are the issues that would be brought up at that time then.
Okay, so if we approve
I mean-
this, we don't stand to lose another $51,000?
Yes.
Right.
We will.
I mean,
We do.
We do.
We do.
But the larger picture is securing our water supply for future development in years out. And while this is not an insignificant amount of money we're spending now, if they decide to not move forward for whatever reason, it's the $14 million payment that we would have to make that we wouldn't make at that time.
So we've already given two payments of $51,000.
Three.
So this would be a fourth.
This would be fourth.
So, okay, so we're in close to $250,000 after tonight.
Yeah, it's not any different than what we've done going through the US 36 EIS process. And we participated in that, spent lobbying dollars for that, different monies for the project to go through that process. But yet, we've got the record of decision, and now we need to come up with funding for it. So to build those improvements on 36, this is a similar type of project where we're spending money up front to go through the FEIS process in hopes that we can build a project at some point in the future, which then we would need to fund through our capital improvement project, along with the partners involved.
So this payment can't be held up until next spring when the decision is made?
No.
So if we say we're not going to pay it now, then we're pretty much...
We're out.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the problem, but, you know, there's not another entity that's going to be funding these studies. I mean, it's us and the collection of the other municipalities and the Platte Valley Water, whatever it's called. But so we're the funding source, and if we don't participate, I think that we're then in a huge problem, because this is what we've been counting on for reliable water. And if that doesn't come to fruition, then we're in a lot of trouble.
And our portion of this process, if you look at the exhibits that were included, is smaller than a number of the cities that are participating.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Gervais?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, Resolution Number SMD 1-7, Series 2010. A resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 approving the Fourth Amendment to Fourth Interim Agreement between the Municipal Subdistrict Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District for participation in the Windy Gap Farming Project.
Motion by Trustee Gregouris. Is there a second? Trustee Skumatz, further discussion? Phyllis?
Cirelli?
Yes.
Gregorius?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Muckle?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Skumo?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. That brings us to approval of a recommendation to Boulder County regarding potential future open space acquisitions and trails request. Trustee
Yeah.
Hanson?
So on this, the only thing that I had a concern about is, it was the level 3 property, and it's listed as a con on here, that the board has expressed a preference to acquire portions of level 3 through the development process rather than an outright purchase. And I don't understand why that would be listed as a con. To me, that's positive. And if we vote on this tonight in favor of it, does that preclude us from being able to do that in the future if we have an opportunity to develop it instead of outright purchasing it?
I just want to make sure I understand. Is the con
One of the
that
cons
it wouldn't be developed or...
is that the board has expressed a preference to acquire the portions of level 3 through development process. rather than outright purchase, and I didn't get that.
So it's been the board's policy in the past is that the, hasn't been specified as a acquisition, a property for acquisition, but rather the western two-thirds would be preserved, while the eastern one-third would be allowed for development. That's been the board's position.
Okay.
The board could certainly change its mind in the future.
Okay. No, I agree with that, but again, I didn't see that as something that was bad.
I think
I
what
think
you-
it's just because it's in, I mean, it goes against what the Open Space Committee is recommending.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it conflicts with what the board has said.
Okay.
Well, since it's brought up, I actually did have one other question. So it had to do with Section 16 of Rocky Flats. And was it, I think what it said in there is that they didn't anticipate dollars being allocated to it, but we were just supportive of acquiring Section 16 through other entities. Is that correct?
Yeah, because I believe there's some federal regulation where it can't be purchased, there have to be an exchange of property.
Right.
It's a school land board, yeah. Okay. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve 7D.
Yeah. So approving a recommendation, not a resolution.
Correct. But I need a motion.
Okay.
I need a motion, though.
I motion to approve recommendation of Board of County regarding potential future open space acquisitions and trail requests.
Motion by trustee Hanson, second by trustee Scrivener. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to preliminary approval of an ordinance amending section 4-2-50 of the Superior Municipal Code to eliminate the vendor fee. Trustee Pennington.
Yes, I'd like us actually to, I'd like a broader discussion on this. At the time when the state reduced the vendor fee from 3.3% down to zero, the state was facing a huge financial crisis. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we as a town use this as an opportunity at the same time to reduce our fee, the break we give to vendors for collecting taxes on our behalf. We reduced it likewise from 3.33 down to zero. And I don't believe that we should make that permanent in the form of a statutory or regulation change after having talked to several independently owned local businesses. While this has a cumulative net effect on us, as estimated by staff, of about $280,000 positive, the impact on locally owned businesses is actually fairly grave. One vendor, for example, gave the story that they are in the position, the net impact on them was $12,000. They had to make the decision to let a part-time person go. They had to consider, because they were no longer given the financial incentive of $12,000 from the town in this time of economic difficulty, they had to contemplate that. I don't know if they actually ended up letting that person go, but that's the type of impact we're having on small, locally owned businesses. So I don't believe the timing of this is appropriate right now. What I'd like to see, and also when I look at the memo that was prepared by staff, yes, it says 31 statutory towns, 12 counties, 28 home rule municipalities have no vendor fee, which means they give no incentive to businesses to collect the sales tax on their behalf. But what it doesn't say is that only represents about 20% of the entities out there. 80% actually, in talking to staff, do give vendors a break. So this is the minority that has no vendor fees. For us to do what we're proposing doing and not giving the financial incentive to businesses to collect those on our behalf puts us in the minority. So obviously, I assume the reason other communities don't do this is because they find an advantage to their businesses of basically giving them this financial incentive. Adding to the fact that we are in the process, a multi-month process of putting together an economic development plan to try to figure out how we can increase economic activity, increase commitment to the town of Superior by small locally owned entities. I just don't think now is the appropriate time to approve this. I'd like to propose waiting to put this into place until, or even to consider this until we have the economic development plan in place and until economic conditions for the town of Superior specifically would mandate this type of action.
Okay. Just to be clear, we're at 0% right now, so what you'd be anticipating is
Right.
doing something different than what
Well,
our
what I would say is the whole thing is premised around the fact that by June 2011, the state can allow theirs to revert back up to 3.33%. So what I would say is at this point in time, we vote this down, and if the states does revert back upward, we likewise revert back upward. A regulation would preclude that. It would keep us at zero and actually put us out of sync with the state. So at this point, if the states feels that they do want to give that financial incentive, again, to businesses, I would suggest we do likewise, unless our economic development plan dictates otherwise or our own financial situation dictates otherwise.
And I know there's other comments, but just also to be clear, this isn't a business incentive plan. This is the reason for a vendor fee, and the attorney can correct me, is that there's certain costs associated with collecting taxes.
Right.
And the thought is that the 3.3% greatly exaggerated the actual costs in collecting taxes. So,
Yeah, I agree with you in calling it such. I simply use those terms to help the audience out, perhaps to understand, and the watching public. And it took me actually talking to myself through this to understand it in that context.
Okay. Trustee Williams?
Yeah, so I was thinking the same thing, but I was also had another point of view as well. And yeah, I'm probably not looking at it politically correct here, but I am looking at it in terms of this was sort of a way to compete to our neighbors in the area. If Louisville has a 3.3 or whatever the vending fee is, and we have 0, we might potentially lose retail to Louisville. So I just want to make sure that we are competing in the same field.
I would say that
Including Broomfield
Sure,
and Erie and
yeah.
Lafayette.
many of your larger companies understand that their systems are automated to a point where the costs are minimal, and this is just adding to their bottom line, their profit. When this was first implemented last year, we heard from, I think, one particular business who was adamant that it was affecting them significantly, but we received little feedback from our other businesses. Not to say that it doesn't have an impact, but they understand that this fee is not actually just covering their costs, but adding significantly to their profit margin, which is what they're in business for. But as a responsible official of the town, I think it's our responsibility to point out to the board that this fee is more than covering their costs, and it's actually there's no right to this vendor fee. There's options, and Paul can add to this, but there's options that we can provide some more information at the next reading of the ordinance, and maybe provide some options for the board to consider to this.
So I would like to know what Louisville does, or Broomfield, and Erie, and Lafayette, if they have a vendor fee or not. And I'm assuming that this probably mostly hurts the small retail vendors than it does the large ones, since their profit margins are probably pretty small.
Trustee Skomats, did you have something?
No, I was, except to say that, thanks for that background, and I just wondered if Mr. Mills had anything to add. But he can either add it tonight or whenever you want next time.
Mr. Nellis, anything?
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Paul Mills, Town Staff. I can specifically respond to the question brought up by Trustee Williams as it relates to at least 4 neighboring municipalities. Cities of Louisville, City of Boulder had no vendor fee. Cities of Lafayette and City of Broomfield do have a vendor fee, but it is capped at $100 a month in Lafayette's case and $200 a month in Broomfield's case. So from, I guess, the competitive advantage or disadvantage point, I've never heard a retailer, in my opinion, make a business decision based on what the vendor fees are. Maybe additional point of clarification, and Trustee Pennington, I can appreciate the perspective that you have taken with the financial incentive, but I think I'd like to belabor from the staff's perspective the comments that the mayor has made, that this fee, the intent of this as it was created decades ago, was to reimburse vendors for recovery of collection and remittance of taxes. Very complicated, really, to be a vendor in the state of Colorado. Very, very arcane and outdated tax law. So back in the day, there was no question there were additional costs associated with this, but in this day and age, with the point-of-sale software programs that have incorporated allocation of the sales tax to different taxing entities decades ago, yeah, I would make an argument that there is little, if any, incremental additional expense associated with it. So from the original creation of this fee to have the vendors recover their costs associated with it, I don't think that's really the case in this market right now, or in this day and age right now. Those are really the only additional comments I have, unless you have any other questions.
So as a follow-up to that, thanks for those comments. So I'm sympathetic to the argument that we might not want to bind the hands of the Economic Development Committee. Let's see, I guess this could be used as, if not strictly defined as, some kind of economic advantage maker to businesses in our town. But if you believe that this, this is not the best way to do it, can we just make up or derive other kinds of economic incentives without having to use a mechanism that already exists?
I think you have a lot of flexibility. I think, but I think we have an application to tell you you start to tread on very, very dangerous ground as it relates to incentivize essentially existing businesses to remain in town.
Thanks.
Trustee Pennington?
I don't know, Paul, if there will be a question here for you, but maybe. A couple of points. I found it interesting that when it was explained to me by a business owner that because his business is very heavily credit card oriented, he actually does incur a hard cost in the collection of our sales tax revenue because he's deemed every time, he's deemed whatever that percentage is for collection for however much is charged. So there's actually is some hard cost. I've asked him to quantify that for me, and hopefully we'll have that for next time. But a point I would like to make is that the net impact to us, as stated in your budget implications, is $280,000 to the town if we allow this fee to spring back to 3.33% from zero. And to me, it is not a big box issue. Costco would rather not pay it, but they're not going to fight it. Target, likewise. The big folks just accept this as a cost of doing business. It is the medium to small, locally owned. private enterprises, and $12,000 does matter to that particular company, or they wouldn't have spent the time bringing it to our attention. Likewise, $1,000 to an even smaller company matters to them and their financial bottom line in this time of economic difficulty. $500 matters right now to the small and locally owned businesses who can't make payroll now. So, to me, it does come down to the previous two things I mentioned, but it also comes down to timing in this economically difficult time. We can always choose to do this after things have recovered, et cetera, and every penny doesn't mean so much to the financial wherewithal. So I guess there wasn't a question in there, but a little bit of personal opinion there.
Trustee Skomatz?
It raised a question for me. So I don't understand the connection between the 5% or 3% extra that credit card transactions cost businesses and this collection of sales tax. I didn't think those were related at all.
I would agree with you. I think they were totally unrelated. So for order of magnitude, we pay roughly 2.3% to our merchant card company for the convenience of having our customers, convenience of letting our customers pay via credit card. And that's a convenience that most retailers will extend to their customers as well. And essentially, cost of doing business. And I respectfully, I don't, in my opinion, there's no correlation between the method of payment and this vendor fee, which is again intended to reimburse vendors for their cost of remitting,
Doing
collecting and
paperwork for
remitting.
you, basically.
Correct.
I'll get it clarified.
Yeah.
So I'd entertain a motion. Once again, this is just a preliminary ordinance, and we'll be coming back at the next meeting to approve this. From anybody who'd like to make that motion. Trustee Pennington?
That's Elia's job.
Trustee
I can make a motion, yes, to approve Town of Superior ordinance number, is it 0-
We don't put one on.
Just a preliminary reading.
Okay, Sears 2010, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior amending Section 4-2-50 of the Superior Municipal Code to eliminate the vendor fee.
Motion by Trustee Kukuris. Is there a second? Trustee Skomatz. Further discussion? All in favor for the preliminary reading? So that is Sorelli, Skomatz, Muckle, Kukuris, and opposed is Hanson, Williams, and Pennington. Okay? Thank you. That brings us to item number, let's see, where am I at? F, adoption of a resolution approving a change orders to the Taylor Coors Agreement. Mr. Magley? Oh, yep, sorry. Sorry.
I thought you were just going to go to the trustee who had a question, sorry.
Let me just say,
do you want to have questions
on this? The concern I had was on change order number 4, bullet point number 4, additional subgrade stabilization and concrete replacement within the community park parking lot. Is that the basketball court?
Yes.
So I see that there was some concrete that was replaced, but what about the rest of it? Because I thought that repaving and all that was free of charge. I thought that was gratis because they parked their equipment in there.
To come up and
Okay.
address this.
I'm sorry, Mr. Magley. So I guess what I was thinking of, could you give us just a thumbnail of what this is all about and
Sure.
the dollar figure attached to it?
Yes. The original contract with Taylor Coors was for street improvements to the reconstruction of Indiana Street from El Dorado Drive to Colton Road, an overlay of the north streets in original town, and stormwater improvements on Blackfoot Street in the Sagamore subdivision. Total contract that was approved was $1,316,123.85. During the construction, the town had a number of change orders that we directed the contractor to make. The cumulative effect of those change orders 3 through 9 resulted in a reduction of the total contract in the amount of $47,825.30, with the final contract price of $1,268,298.55. And then I'll let Kurt go through the specifics of those change orders.
Very good. Public Works Director.
Good evening, Kurt Carr, Public Works Director. So change order number 4, item number
12.4.
Community Park.
Oh, in the memo, I'm sorry, I went straight to the... So, we had planned to use the parking lot community park for a staging area, and we had simply planned to do about 1.5 inch overlay on that parking lot. When we got in there, what we realized is there was only about 1 inch of asphalt there. We were surprised. I was surprised that it held up for as long as it had. So, we had to do a lot more patching in there. We had to do patching in there, which we had not planned to do. And then we also added some concrete replacement, which was not planned from originally. And we added that because we were ahead of budget and we could do a little more in that area. There were some drainage issues with the concrete drainage pan in there. And so those are the reasons why on that bullet point. Okay.
I have a question in that. I am still confused. I guess I had interpreted that for Taylor Coors to be able to park their heavy equipment in that lot, that was their responsibility then to bring back up to par in its entirety. And I guess I didn't understand what the rest of what you just said. I understood what you said, but I didn't understand that to be the case.
So what you said is true. Taylor Coors needed to bring that up to par. Mm-hmm. There were areas where they had some damage to the parking area, and we worked with them and they replaced that at their cost. The entire parking lot, though, had a very thin overlay, like 1 inch, maybe 2 inches in some heavy spots, but there wasn't much. And we went in and we could have done the work we planned to do. We could have just overlaid it, but it wouldn't have left a good product there. It wouldn't have ensured a long-term performance. So what we did is we do what we do is called a proof roll, and we went in there and took a truck, not as heavy as some of the heaviest trucks, but something that would provide some pressure, and we identified the areas of soft spots underneath, and those are the areas where we patched. And then the concrete, as I had said, that was not part of it. They didn't damage any concrete. The concrete wasn't affected. And because we were ahead of budget, we felt that we could replace some more cracked concrete in there and correct some drainage issues that we saw while we were in there.
I guess my real question then is, at the outset, when we decided to do Indiana Colton, Indiana to Christie, or whatever that was our intent to repair that parking lot or not?
The intent was just to overlay it.
Okay.
Because we knew there would be some damage to the parking area. The striping and the parking lot would see some wear and tear, and it just needed an overlay.
Right.
The intent was not to patch.
And the intent was for Taylor Coors to do that at their expense?
As
for the privilege of using it for parking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's see, I had a question. So my understanding is that we somehow saved $48,000 in this project. Am I reading that correctly?
You're reading that correctly.
So how was the town able to achieve those levels of savings?
Several areas. The way we broke out the change orders, we broke them out by project and then by change order types within that project. So if you look at the beginning of how we approached this process, we didn't go through a design process. We didn't pay an engineer to come in and survey it and draw plans and approve plans. To make up for going into a project without a set of plans, we set allowances. We said, well, these are some areas that we are not quite sure. One of those would be utility structure relocation, manholes or valves. And so some of the change orders you'll see are allowance reductions. And in some areas we used all the allowances, and other areas we were able to not use those allowances. So we gained a substantial savings there. And then the other area where we obtained the savings was on original town. After the contract was approved, we carried out additional negotiation with them on some of the costs. and we had felt some other, even though Quality Paving provided the most complete bid, we felt that there were some other vendors that, although they had provided incomplete bids, Quality's Paving's numbers, we felt, could go down. And so we forced them to kind of rebid this portion of work again with the two lows. So they essentially bid it out for us, and then after that, we kind of challenged them some more, and that second round of bid, which they didn't have to do by contract, but they did it for us because we had asked, and it was with Taylor Coors, it was a team effort, and they were on our side of the team. It worked out that we were able to save another $19,000. So those were the areas of our savings.
So just as a taxpayer, thank you to town staff for saving those types of dollars. That's fantastic. So job well done.
Thank you.
Trustee Skumatz.
And it seems like, now, maybe I misremembered, but my recollection is this was supposed to be a fixed bid thing, that it was, if it went over, that was their problem.
Their problem. Except
And
for...
I thought they also got if it was under, they kind of got that benefit as well. How did we end up with it?
Well, the allowances, they didn't get that no matter what. That was a variable for both of us. In areas, they did have some areas where I think the paving contractor probably put down some more asphalt than they did, and they did eat it. There were some areas in Original Town where, actually all over Original Town, we ran into old drainage culverts, the old railroad, and they took that stuff out at their cost. There was no change orders. So there were areas where they ate it. One other thing I'd like to add, if it's okay, it's not reflected in this memo because we haven't officially completed the project on Billings, but there were some concerns of the structure of this contract was they had a fee, right, a 3.5% fee roughly. And then there were general conditions, and there were some concerns as we approved these contracts that why were we paying Taylor Coors these general conditions. Each of these change orders that added to a scope of work, we kind of addressed it as a separate project, because if any one project went bad, they had to kind of stand alone on their own. One thing that's not reflected here is we had agreed through contract changes to give Taylor Coors $120,000 in general conditions to pay for project managers, superintendents, whatnot. They're currently at about 55% of that. I anticipate at the end of the day, they're only going to charge out about $75,000, $80,000 of that. There'll be another $30,000 to $40,000 savings for us on this project. So there's another reduction that's not recognized here as well.
Great.
Very good news.
Other comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Skumatz?
I actually had first one last comment.
Yes, I'm sorry,
and
of course.
I'm happy to go ahead. The other comment was the concern I had about that project was the length of time that there's a warranty, and so I wouldn't mind us sort of keeping track of those dollars that we saved, and if it doesn't quite pan out, that we use that money to help fix anything that might have gone wrong. I have no suspicion that anything would go wrong, but it'd be great not to lose sight of that.
Sure.
So I'm happy to move Town of Superior Resolution Number R60, Series 2010, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving change orders number 3 through 9 with Taylor Coors LLC.
Motion by Trustee Skumatz. Is there a second? Trustees Williams. Phyllis, we're saving money, but maybe we should have a roll call.
Yes, please. Gregoris,
That's a resounding yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Muckle,
Yes.
Pennington,
Yes.
Skumatz,
Yes.
Williams,
Yeah.
Sorelli.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That brings us to G, adoption of a resolution approving a change order to the Diamond Excavating Agreement for Superior Metropolitan District Number 1. Trustee Hanson.
Yeah, this originally came in under the $25,000 mark, was approved. We know there was another bid, and I'm wondering how this came in, that did we not plan, or was Kurt still here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did we not plan to, in light of the additions to this, properly? So there was additions made to this once the job was started. It was at $24,120. Then we had to add $8,000 more in additions to it.
Correct.
So is this something that should have gone back out to bid? And possibly would the other bidder, Superior Maintenance, would they have come in under the bid from Diamond?
So, if I could you describe what the project is, and then...
Yeah, so this project was to address shifting soils that have affected the sewer line, the mainline sewer on Jasper Way. We'd identified 3 areas for point repairs and had put those out to bid with a certain repair methodology. As we got down to the repairs, we made some adjustments to our scope of work on how we were going to perform those repairs based off what we saw once we were down there. It involved different parts, pieces that were, a couple $100 here and there, $50 here and there. And, I think that ended up costing, let me get mine, roughly $1,200. And then what we did was add a point repair, and that point repair we added based off further input we got from the residents when we were out there doing the job and the nature of the point repairs that we saw once they were uncovered. So I would not have put this back out to bid. The bid was placed out at a unit cost, and it was a lump sum per service repaired, and that lump sum cost was the lowest lump sum cost per point repair by Diamond, and not Superior Maintenance. Their lump sum service repair cost was more expensive. Additionally, Superior Maintenance did not provide a technically complete bid, so their bid was disqualified. And I've had that conversation with Superior Maintenance as well. We require a bid bond. They did not require the bid bond, or they did not submit a bid bond, and so therefore their bid was not valid.
Okay.
So we had one responsive bidder.
Okay. And we always require a bid bond?
We do.
Okay.
It's in our general template that we use.
Further questions? I entertain a motion. Trustee Sorelli?
Okay, I move that, find it. We approve a resolution, Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, approving resolution number SMD-8, Series 2010.
Motion by... I'm sorry.
A resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 approving change order 1 with Diamond Excavating, Inc. for Jasper Way Sewer Point repair.
So, motion by Director Sorelli. I think I saw a second by Director Williams and Phyllis.
Hanson,
Yes.
Knuckle,
Yes.
Pennington,
Yes.
Skuback,
Here, yes.
Good that you're here, too. Yes, very nice.
Williams,
Yes.
Sorelli,
Yes.
Gregores.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. That brings us to item number 8, and actually I'm going to recommend to staff that we discuss 8 and 9 together since they seem to be significantly associated. So, Mr. Magley.
Item number 9 on the agenda is an agreement for consideration by the board for with Lee Like Spikes for the bike park component of the 3 Parks project.
And number 8.
I'm sorry?
And number 8.
And number 8. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. I'll cover 9, and then I'm going to ask Juanita to go through number 8 for us. The Lee Like Spikes agreement is for design and construction management services. Lee Likes has been identified as a partner in the GOCO grant on this project. They'll be contributing 50% of their services to the project, which I think is great. Some of the items in the agreement for Lee Like Spikes is rough design to the town by January 14th, reviewed by the ProStack Advisory Committee in January after we've received the rough design, and then final design to the town by February 11th. Bike park will include the pump track, dirt jumps, kids beginners area, natural terrain features. The agreement's for $8,000, and is scheduled for the work in the spring, March of next year.
Okay.
Juanita?
I guess my only comment about that is I'd love to see volunteer activity in this park, so
Yes,
it's
definitely.
a great thing to see. Director Dominguez.
Juanita Dominguez, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. That's one of the reasons we got the Great Starburst Award just recently from Colorado Lottery, was the great volunteerism that we have within the town. But let me just go back just a little bit, and especially for those that are watching this evening.
Would you have an overhead that could be presented doable?
Yes, I think it's...
Sure. So it's on black screen. Sorry about that, but...
No, it's fine. I think it's, yeah.
As we're getting this up and running, I just wanted to introduce the entire project. There are 3 amenities that have been working on for quite a few years, and it goes all the way back to 2005. When you look at 2005 with the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Master Plan, sorry about that. We had talked about a couple of these amenities. Officially, though, in 2009, the Board of Trustees, along with the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee, talked about putting together 3 amenities as one park. These 3 amenities are a disc golf course, a dog park, and of course, a mountain bike skills course. Throughout that time, from 2009 of January to today, a lot of work has been going on behind the scenes, and as well in work sessions and in public meetings to talk about the intricate details of this planning. Before you this evening, we have a contract for various aspects of this particular park. As you recall, there were some items that were taken care of on the southern portion of this park with the 9-hole disc golf course earlier in the fall.
Could I interrupt just for 1/2 second? So, for people that aren't intimately following this process, would you mind giving us some orientation of where the amenities are located and just
Sure.
geographic location of this project?
Where's Rock Creek Parkway for
Sure.
those who don't know?
Sure. For those who don't know, this is along Rock Creek Parkway, right here. This is the wastewater treatment plant along Honey Creek Lane. This is the Saddlebrook Townhomes location, and on the southern portion is the Horizons apartment complex. What you see is on the north side of Rock Creek. This is actually the creek that flows through. On the north side of Rock Creek, there's the preferred dog park. There is a central entry area, some parking, and a bridge that crosses the creek to the west. We have the mountain bike skills course, and along the southern section here is a 9-hole disc golf course.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So as we moved along with the project, we had gone to several different work sessions and chatted with the board regarding some of the designs in this particular project. In May of 2010, there was a work session that was held, and there were a couple of questions that were left to be answered. At that time, the board suggested that when bids came forward for the construction of different elements within the park, that these particular items, which there were 2, be brought back as add alternates within the contract. So tonight, before you, we have a contract that is for the parking lot, the entry area, trails, the bridge, the dog park. It includes provisions for supplying and installing drainage pan for the bike facility, the fill dirt for the bike facility, and potable water installation. The 2 items were regarding a 50-foot buffer, a 50-foot buffer from the creek bed, or a 50-foot buffer from the center of creek, and that was something that the board wanted to see bid alternatives on and discuss this evening regarding which way to go. Also, within this item, the ProStack has asked and recommended going back to the 30-foot buffer. The other item was to determine whether or not the dog park would have the ground cover as grass or gravel. So in effect, what we had done here tonight was put information into your packet to talk about the 50-foot buffer and the grass or gravel option. With that, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Questions from the board? Any questions?
I've got a
Pennington?
materials question. I've not read or missed it, Juanita. What is the fencing around the dog park proposed to be? Is that chain link?
No, that is three-rail fencing with the background of wire fencing.
Okay.
Trustee Gregores? Yes, I had an opportunity today to walk the park with Jim Payne. As most of you know, I've been in favor of this park from its inception. I think it adds a lot to our community. I'm excited for it. Austin, you did a great job. We walked most of the holes, not all 9 of them, but most of them. So thank you for your good work. I would be okay with the 30-foot buffer from the creek, but 30 or 50 feet, I mean, I'm okay either way, but if the majority of the board is okay with 30-foot buffer, I would be okay with that.
Okay. Other
And one more thing as far as the parking structure, we have received several emails from town residents. I think it would be a mistake to have a smaller parking lot and then have to redo it and add to it, or have people park on Saddlebrook or park on Honey Creek. So I think the more ample parking lot we have, the better off I think we will be. And I think we should do it right the first time from the get-go. So these are my thoughts for now.
Okay. Other questions? Trustee Williams?
I just wanted to see the breakdown of the costs and the overall total cost of the entire park. I know Trustee Skumat's got that, and I was wondering if I could also have that, or maybe the rest of the board members would want that
Yeah,
as
that
well.
went out late, I mean, right before the work session, she completed that
Okay.
and sent it out.
Oh.
So there are two different, you're
Bigger
actually
copies?
referring to two different spreadsheets that were generated. One was generated today regarding Trustee Williams' request, and another was sent out on close to September 15th in the digest. And so there are two different items. But yes, I have them with me right now. So if you'd like to see.
Great.
Well, I guess we all should.
Thank you.
So the spreadsheet that you have before you right now breaks down per feature and per contract and non-contract items. This is a total project plan budget. This is according to the contract and non-contract items. It is also including to-date expenditures.
So, by far, the dog park is the most expensive item on the list. And I'm just wondering, in that 100,000, just specifically for the dog park, not the shade structure or miscellaneous dog park elements, what is included in that 100 grand? What is making up that 100 grand? Is it all the grass, the fence, the gravel?
It's all of those items. In the dog park itself, it's fencing, it is irrigation, it is grass, it is grading and soil. It is, on one of your options, gravel. It's an acre's worth of built amenity.
So does the irrigation pose a difficult problem for this specific area for the dog park?
No, it does not.
It does not. So there's nothing being built that's any different than any other grading or irrigation? Is it all grading, or is there piping? What exactly is irrigation specifically?
Irrigation is PVC pipe
Okay.
under soil.
So it's just, I mean, are you talking regrading and as well as piping, and are you diverting the water from that area to a detention pond? I mean, what exactly is happening?
There's portions of this particular park that does have a water quality pond included in it. At the request of the Board of Trustees at one of the previous work sessions with the board, there is a water quality pond.
Okay, and typically do all dog parks have that?
No?
No, okay. But we're using that precaution because of the creek corridor, correct?
Because it was a recommendation of the board to do something further than what had been done within the design initially.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to kind of break down and figure out why the dog park is so much.
Actually, the dog park was a little bit more than what we're actually spending, so.
And as far as irrigation, well, not irrigation, I'm sorry, as far as grass, would you be reseeding the grass in the spring and the fall, or are you going to reseed it regularly? I mean, what kind of upkeep is needed for a dog park for grass?
In the grass portion of just the dog park, there's a maintenance item on an annual basis of about $13,000. For the gravel, it's a little bit higher. It's actually $14,500 for the gravel.
So with the gravel, how often is that replaced or needed to be replaced?
With the gravel,
A year?
Each year we'll have to add a little bit more gravel. We'll need to rototill the gravel, and we'll also need to roll the gravel so that there's an even surface.
So you're saying that it's not an upfront cost, it's a long-term maintenance cost that would cost more than the grass?
Yes.
Okay. And
Wait, is it more expensive to put gravel in or to seed?
It's more expensive to put gravel in.
Put the
Yes.
gravel in, so the upfront cost for gravel is more.
I understand that.
Okay.
My question was,
And the maintenance is as well.
and the maintenance as well.
Right.
So the upkeep of the maintenance for a gravel dog park is more than for a grass
Yes.
dog park. And if you could just give me specifics of exactly what you have to do to maintain the grass on the dog park regularly, so that it's always, with that many dogs and that much use, always looking green and not, obviously, pit holes.
So there, again, the $13,000 is for the upkeep on an annual basis for the grass. What that includes is fertilization, it includes mowing, it includes additional seed from time to time, it includes water costs.
Okay, so maybe I'll just reframe my questions then. Actually, in Louisville, they have a dog park that's in their community park. and it started out with grass, and now it's gravel. What can we do to ensure that we will start with grass and stay with grass? I mean, what do we have to do? And did you find out what maybe their pitfalls were?
As far as what Louisville's pitfalls were, you know, they have said that they wish they would have continued to try to keep their grass facility grass and not convert it to what most people know as quite a bit of mud. However, as far as the $13,000, again, within the maintenance line for this particular dog park, again, it will include continually fertilizing, making sure that we get a good base grass before we start using it, and that we continue to practice good standards as we do with all the other grass facilities that we manage and maintain.
So do we know why Louisville had a difficult time maintaining grass on their dog park?
I'd venture to say, but I don't know for a fact, but I'd venture to say that they have much more difficult time maintaining their grass areas as a whole than we do. I know that they've had a lot of struggles in the past for just their general fund issues, so, but that's just my opinion.
I just had a quick comment about grass. I think your department and this town historically has done really an excellent job at taking care of grass throughout the town.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. It's the truth. So I just feel like if the $13,000, you feel that's and all that it will take to keep it at the certain level that we have come to expect from you, if you think that's enough, I feel comfortable with that.
Well, if I could just make a comment that if it were up to me, I would put the grass sod rather than seeding.
Really?
However, that would cost quite a bit more, so.
Let's go there, though. That is actually my concern. I am a strong proponent of grass, both for the dog and for me, being out there with the dog. But I do have problems with the seeding, because to get that lush lay of grass, it takes time, and it certainly will take a lot more time with dogs trampling on it. So would you tell us about seed versus sod and what the incremental cost of sod would be?
Sure. There was an ad alternate that we asked Wineland to come up with for sod. Unfortunately, it was close to $100,000 more for the entire acre for us to be able to put the sod in. However, if that were something that could be reconsidered after the work is completed in the spring and we have significant cost savings, I would say that, maybe we come back to the board and say we've made some cost savings within this project where we think we can, as staff, internally install sod at a significantly lower cost.
What's the hard cost of the sod versus the rolling?
Well, interestingly enough, we had the bid come in at $1.80 to $1.85 for the contractor to do the sod. We went out and looked at sod, purchasing the sod per square foot ourselves, and we got a better price of about 60 cents per square. However, we would have to come in and do the work ourselves. So that's as far as I got on that one.
We've got great success getting volunteers on this project.
Right, you're absolutely right.
Under proper management. And I think it's much easier, Austin, than doing that disc golf, so maybe you can get a buddy.
The Fairview baseball team did their own side on their field.
Trustee Skumatz?
Sure. I was unable to find more details on this grass versus gravel issue. And the gravel doesn't have a water system under it, is that right?
It does. We need to have an irrigation system underneath the gravel so that we can wash off the gravel and also be able to wet the gravel so that it doesn't become hot and stinky, basically.
Okay. I am never going to be comfortable with that. I'm never going to understand that, or so that's is that what all the other parks in the area do? Water it, or is that something that
They have to go in and actually water it down. The way that they water it down may be a little bit different.
I've never heard of irrigated gravel. It just completely freaks me out. Okay, I guess the other question I have is on the parking. I've heard there have been citizens who've written emails and come here and said they want the higher level of parking, and others have said they want the lower level of parking. I think there's strong arguments on both sides. My preference is to start with a lower amount of parking and then go up if we need it. But in either case, I would really like to know what the material is that you're considering for that parking. I wouldn't want it to be a hard surface. I would hope that we would do something like, not even perhaps gravel, but they have lots of plastic things that you can put into the ground that just stabilizes the dirt and makes it totally permeable and all that sort of stuff, or whatever. I didn't see what kind of material you're talking about here.
The material is recycled asphalt, millings, basically. That is the same surface that is going to be used, that is currently going to be used at the trailhead. It is permeable. It is, as a matter of fact, being donated by the town, once again, to make this project very cost-effective. What's in the bid is for the contractor to actually lay the recycled asphalt.
And I think the estimate you gave me was $5,000 or something like that for for doing half the parking at a time.
That's just my estimate, looking at the numbers that I had at the time. We'd have to go back to the contractor and get the real number, but that is the estimate I did give you this afternoon.
So, going back and doing it might be on the order of $5,000 that we would have saved, and we do it at a second time instead. I don't see it as a huge cost. I see it as I see it as responding flexibly to what's needed. I'm in no way encouraging parking along any of the streets or whatever, especially Honeycreek. I don't think that's what would happen, but I think it would be pretty fast. We'd find out pretty quickly if the additional parking was needed. It's much harder to pull it out than it is to add it. At least that's been my experience. Once it's there, it stays.
And I think you just made a comment regarding it would only cost that much to put back in. It would probably cost more to put back in because we would have mobilization costs and we would have to get a different contractor to do the work. But
it's not double, it's not triple, it's a little bit more. I don't think we lose a lot, and I think it keeps flexibility. But you go on to some other people.
Trustee Surley?
Well, I had a similar question about parking, and you've already addressed now, but I did have the one thing that still is open is curb and gutter. I guess that's for the board to decide.
So the curb and gutter, we had discussed at the May 10th meeting, and there is no curb and gutter due to the fact that there was the millings that we were using.
Okay.
So there's no curb and gutter. But as part of the contract itself, there is what we call the cedar curbing that will be used along the parking lot.
And the second question I have is, since there's been some talk about, well, ProStack recommended 30-foot buffer instead of 50, do we have any idea of what the difference in cost is on that?
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, we did the math, and again, we would have to go back to the contractor, but looking at that, it would cost less than, or between, I would say, between $5,000 and $8,000, depending on the numbers. So it would include additional fencing, it would include additional grading and additional irrigation and seeding. It would, I would say that if the board wanted to go that route, that we consider, or the board considers, a not-to-exceed amount that's 10 grand or 10,000 greater than what the contract amount is, so that we can make sure that it can get done. My biggest concern is that the irrigation piece, we would have to probably redesign a bit, but I don't see going over that at all.
Can I tail on to that, Joe? What's the effective acreage inside the park if we do 30 feet? Is it 30 feet from bank? Is that what we're looking at? 30
We're
feet
looking
from
at
bank?
30 feet from center.
Okay.
And 30 feet from center was,
1.2 acres.
No,
No,
50
it's
foot from
50.
center is 1.2.
yeah, I didn't,
For some reason, at 1.4 acres.
yeah, mine too, 1.4 acres is about.
Is that right? 1.4?
Trustee Hanson.
Okay. The first thing on the parking lot, I would yield to Studio Urbanista. They were the designers, and they were the experts on this. And their recommendation was, and I wouldn't say that we stick with 40 stalls or 45 or whatever. We just stick with the area that they had recommended. That way there's flexibility. So that would be my recommendation. Then the other question is about the area. We have two options, 50 foot from center, 50 foot from bank. How did we come up with those numbers? Was that by expert testimony, or was that just our own personal preferences?
So first, let's address the issue with parking. John Lanterman with Studio Urbanista.
Good evening. John Lanterman, Studio Urbanista. If you want to, there were a couple questions. So we can start with parking?
Yep.
Does that sound good? What we did, what's shown there now is about 44 spaces. What we did when we originally got involved, we did a scan, kind of looked nationally at what different parking demands were. And to tell you the truth, there's a pretty wide spread in kind of parking requirements for these uses. Also to step back and say, because these uses are not your standard park uses, it's not like a ball field, or it's not like a recreation facility where we have a certain number of square feet or anything like this. So there's a pretty wide range, and we looked at what places were doing nationally. We looked at a number of parks that include dog parks, and a number of those, especially in the Front Range, are kind of multi-use parks that might include shared parking, say, where they've added a dog park in the last few years because of demand, that might be tied in with a pool facility, for example. So they're kind of different uses that are stacked in here, and we came up with a range. This was done some time ago. I looked at some of this stuff. It seemed like from about 38 to 55, somewhere in that range, we were pretty comfortable with. That would work. And then what we had to do, it's like with all this stuff, we had to look at the site and understand the site. So in laying this out, you can see we have the access point, the existing one that goes into the landscape. Top button. Okay. I won't point this in your eyes. The top button, or the top access point that goes into the landscape drop-off yard right here. And then just to the south, we said, well, we know we're in this range, so what can we lay out? And just to the south of this access point is a ditch that comes across. And from the beginning of this, we wanted it to be as cost-effective as possible. So instead of really altering with working with the drainage down there, having to put culverts in, a number of additional items, and we could fit that range of parking in here, that's how we approached that, to come up with that. And at one point in the interim, we were looking at only doing a small portion of it, say maybe 10 spaces. And we also have to consider this parking is not just for a 1 or 1.2 or 1.4 dog park, 1.4 acre dog park. It's for the dog park, It's for people going in, using Frisbee golf with the 9-hole disc golf course, and also an acre of, for the bike skills course. And the other thing that we need to layer in here is all these uses, dog park, Frisbee golf, and the bike skills course. It's not just a neighborhood use. We're going to be attracting people. It's more regionally oriented for some of this. People are willing to travel to use some of these facilities. So it's not just small neighborhood tot lot or whatever. So layering that stuff in, we came to the determination that that seemed like a reasonable parking area.
Assuming this wasn't advertised as a regional draw or whatever, what would the usage be for our town's use?
In terms of parking demand?
What parking would be needed?
I still think just using this...
We're not looking to build a regional draw, to my understanding.
No.
So let's back that right out of it, and then what would we need for parking?
I think, what we need to do is look at that and just at least understand that. And all I'm saying is we took that into consideration. I'm in the layout of this. I still think it's kind of hard to put your blinders on because there are going to be people, coming from the immediate area outside your town limits to use
walking distance.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that we have to consider in this. There is potential because of the trail that we are going to get some users that will, walk in possibly to use this. And so I still stand behind. I feel pretty good that that we're going to see this, especially peak. There are different demands, weekday versus weekend, and I think weekend use that we could be using this parking lot.
Mayor, just want to make sure we're done. Trustee Gregorius?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we leave enough time for public comment. There are a lot of people here today. They're pretty passionate, as I can tell from head nods. And
We
so on.
definitely will have all the public comment, so I just want to make sure the board questions are done. Trustee Pennington?
John, where are you? Yeah. Would you flip back to the color slide? Number 1. While that's loading, I think we also have to take into account, I am certainly an advocate, I'll just disclose, public disclosure, I'm an advocate of doing it right the first time and making sure we've got ample parking. Again, I don't think we have the luxury of accommodating parking on Honey Creek or on Enterprise. We're unloading dogs, and we may be unloading bikes. I mean, people may come with bikes on the back, and we're unloading dogs, which takes, I prefer a little more ample parking stall so that you don't ding my car doors. So I do want to take that into account. But what I wanted the other visual up there for, was that done to scale as best you could?
Yes, it is to scale.
Well, what I saw was with 44 spots up there, the parking lot was a little blip in the overall image of that whole park. And I think that was relevant to call out. I don't think that given the size of the full park itself, that we're going to have an asphalt jungle up there. It's going to be a contained area, and as soon as we get that back up, I think everybody can see the proportion of the parking area to the entire park, and I think it is just a really small part of it.
Sorry about that, it's not responding.
In the meantime, Trustee
Gerst, did you have
I
more
do.
questions? I know Trustee Skomas does.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with Trustee Pennington as far as the parking lot is concerned.
Okay. Trustee Skomas, in the meantime?
Sure. So I just wanted to know what is the cost of the irrigation part of the either grass or gravel?
The irrigation portion is approximately $7,000.
$7,000 to install the piping? Is that what you're saying? Is that-
Yes.
Okay. And then on the grass issue, I have a question because when we were first presented this some time back, it was explained that in order to make sure that we could maintain the grass, we had to have dogs on half and the other half be restoring all the time. And then we would flip that periodically, so that essentially we'd have half a dog park at any one time. So the 1.2 would be 0.6 or whatever.
It was actually 3.2.
In any case, at some point, that description of how one maintains grass in a grass park went away. I don't know if it was because there were questions or what, but I don't understand why at the beginning we needed half to rest, and now we don't need half to rest anymore. Can you explain that one?
Sure. A couple of things. At that point, we had a 3.2-acre dog park where it was easy to split into halves. And what we did when we had a smaller dog park to work with is, and I don't want to goof this up again, but is we increased the amount of gravel and transition area between the grass and gravel to help with some of those problem areas that a lot of different dog parks will have, rather than try to split a very small park already into two very equally smaller dog parks. So that was the solution that the consultant team and staff came up with through research that would assist with this. And as a matter of fact, in your packet, you can see there was a letter from one of the gurus of dog park places, and he does make a comment about our transitioning, that he felt that was a good transition for this particular dog park with grass.
I guess one of the questions I have about that is, so we're having a smaller dog park, which to me means every square foot would be more intensively used than the large dog park, and we don't need to cycle that?
Cycling it would be a good thing to do if there was more of it. However, we looked at different options to assist with that. If necessary, staff could come in and put in some temporary fencing if that's what we felt was needed. We think that what we've done so far in building up a transition area with the gravel, that should suffice. If it doesn't, then we'll go to option B and go from there.
Trustee Pennington?
If you would just point out the parking area up there in relation to the entire park.
So this is the parking area here.
And that accommodates how many spots?
44.
Okay. Thanks.
Trustee Skomas?
I think one of my other questions has to do with the move from 50 feet. I think it first came to us with 50 feet from the center. We asked for it to be considered 50 feet from the edge of the bank, and now suddenly it's at 30 feet, and that seems just counter to the direction of I thought the board's recommendations and questions were going.
So in the initial designs, when this concept design was initially presented to the Board of Trustees, it was 30 feet. It was 30 feet from center. We came to a work session, and 50 feet was thrown out there. So the consulting team and staff moved it to 50 feet. The following work session, there was some discussion about was that 50 feet from center or 50 feet from bank. And again, we made that determination that we would evaluate the 50-foot from center and 50-foot from bank and bring it back to the board, and that's what we did.
I had a couple of questions also. So just in terms of the parking, so you mentioned that this would be millings or recycled asphalt. So that can't be striped, right?
No, it cannot.
We're just anticipating that's the general size that would be there, but there wouldn't be striped stalls there.
No, striped stalls would not be on the recycled asphalt. However, there is a way that we can mark the cedar posts.
Okay, that was my next question. So, and then just in terms of the ADA use, do we need some concrete there to allow access, or do you think we will be in compliance with this?
We believe we'll be in compliance with this and the recycled asphalt.
Okay. And then, is there any downside? I know that this was brought up briefly in terms of the dog park fencing, is to include the water quality pond, which I can't actually identify up there right now, within the whole park, so you can actually expand the size of the park a little bit without getting closer to the creek. Is there any difficulty with that? It didn't seem like that was included in a drawing.
No, the water quality pond is actually on the exterior side of the fence for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
One, obviously, was a water quality issue in which it's basically a bioswale, and it's not something that we would want the dogs to be in. It's something that we want to keep separate.
You think there's actually going to be water in that? Or?
No, I think it really creates a swale, so to speak, and there'll be cattails and a lot of plant material in there. So, again, it's not something
It's not going to be grass, basically.
Right.
Okay. All right, thanks. Questions? Trustee Williams and Trustee Gomez? Sorry, Trustee Hanson.
So, on the dog park, I was wondering, with Louisville's dog park that's in their community park, do you know how many acres that is, excluding the small lake they have?
You know, I don't recall. Maybe somebody can throw that number out.
I believe the overall acre,
I'm sorry, yeah.
John Lanterman, Studio Urbanista. I believe the overall acreage of the entire park's about 11 acres. The entire park. But I don't know how big the pond is that they have in there.
Not the pond, I mean the area that, within the dog park that is, cordons off the pond that they have. What is that size? Do we know?
Okay.
If I'm being told it's about a little bit over 1 acre without the...
I'm sorry, what?
I'm being told about a little bit over an acre without the pond.
Without the pond, it's a little over an acre. Okay. All right. Go ahead, I'll have more questions like that.
Trustee Gomez?
I'd asked about and been told there were bike racks. Can you show me where those are?
I'm sorry?
I'd asked about and was told there were bike racks when I asked people on Prost. Can you tell me? I just couldn't find them on the map. Are they like right next to parking or something?
Did you...
I can't find it.
It's included.
Okay. Trustee Hanson?
Yeah, the discussion about 30 foot from the center came up again because that's always been ProStaff's position, that they've always wanted 30 foot from the center. And the only reason why they approved 50 foot from the center at one point, because they thought that was the only two options they had, was 50 foot from the center or 50 foot from the bank. But their position has always been 30 foot from center because we know from expert recommendation that you need at least 1 1/4 acres for this park to be successful. Well, right now, 50 foot from center leaves us at 1.2 acres, so we're below that. Much of the conversation tonight is about maintenance and rotating. If we have worn areas, well, the smaller we make this, the more we're going to have wear and tear in certain areas, so we might as well make it bigger. One of the other issues that had came up in the past is drainage. We know drainage is going away from the creek, so there's no negative impact on drainage into the creek. So why not go 10 feet from the center? And then it's just the dimensions. It works better when it's a square park as opposed to a narrow one. If we have to block it off because of usage, boy, that area is going to be so much smaller. we really need to consider going to 30 foot from the center of the creek.
Other questions right now?
Trustee Pennington?
I would open this up to, I know, Kurt, I've attended these hearings since this was a concept as a member of the public, and I've heard presentations by both of you on this park, and I would like to know the professional opinion of the efficacy of 30 feet from center. I agree with you, Juanita. I was in the audience when 50 was thrown out there and 50 became the operative number, and it was literally, that's how it happened. Somebody said 50, and so we started talking about 50. But I'd like to hear from the two professionals who helped put this master plan together. Does 30 do what we needed to do in terms of keeping that corridor between the creek and the dog park where we want it visually, structurally, for creek security, whatever those variables are? So
if I could just comment just before.
Okay, sure.
And I'm not sure that Kurt feels comfortable coming up here and talking about this, but, a lot of the research that was carried out by staff as well as Studio Urbanista and ProStack, there was no mention to a safe zone away from a body of water. As a matter of fact, you'll see that there are a lot of dog parks who have water features within them. Mm-hmm. And whether it's a creek or a pond or whatnot, there are quite a few in the nation that are utilizing the water features that they have. I'm not saying that is good, bad, or,
So can I put you on the spot? This is your profession. 30 from center, 50 from center, or 50 from the edge? If you have this
30 from
decision
center
making.
is just fine.
And John, I'd like to hear from you. And Kurt, if you're comfortable.
Yeah, John Lantern with Studio Urbanista. Yeah, I think 30 is adequate for this. And also our bent coming at this, really looking at the bigger systems, the water quality. Our biggest concern was to have some buffer so that drainage would not go directly into the creek, and the 30 feet does meet that. And the other statements of, if you can get a little wider park, a larger area, it's going to be able to spread out that impact. That was the idea. When you first come in and you have the corral, it's concrete. Then from that, the most intense area we're showing is gravel, but as it disperses, then the grass can hold up, and the wider that area is and the more you disperse it, then you're going to have less impact. And so the grass would hold up better.
Thank you.
It's been a while. I'm on the other side now, but I'm going to talk like I'm not.
So am I, Kurt.
That's true. I think we're overthinking it. I think 30 is fine. I think it's a function of, first to be a function of the creek, the edge of the creek. Sometimes it drops off, sometimes it's there. You may not have 30 feet. Maybe you're forced to have 50. Maybe you can get a little bit closer. I think if you get a little bit closer, it doesn't affect it either. It's all how we manage it after it's built, how we manage that riparian buffer. So I think the 30 is fine. I think it should be a little bigger if the board feels that it should be bigger. It definitely helps. And the bigger the square footage, the more the maintenance of whatever goes there, gravel or grass, but the less intense it is to use. So, those are my two thoughts on this.
Thank you.
And my only comment about the 30 versus 50, I heard each of you say 30 is enough for safety, but safety is not all that the people who raised 50 feet were talking about. It's talking about strolling along the creek without feeling like you're being squashed between a dog park and a creek, and maintaining the integrity of the creek as a natural area, not only safety about whether the dog feces are going to go into that. That's certainly the minimum, but that's not what the move from 30 to 50 feet was about at all.
Okay, so if you, and I think that's aesthetics, is how wide a walkway you want. I don't think there's a technically right answer. It's just kind of how you want it to feel.
Other questions from the board? Yes. Trustee Williams? Trustee Gutierrez?
So, because we did not approve this park as an overall approval, and we didn't have all our ducks in a row, and we didn't figure this all out ahead of time, we've already, at this point, we've created a 9-hole disc golf course, and we already set a precedence that it's 50 feet from the creek edge with the disc golf pads and where they launch from. And I guess that's, at this point, if we're going to change that to a 30-foot from the center of the creek, I mean, that's obviously a drawback because we weren't able to approve this park with all of the features and all of the design and everything approved, and then off you go. You create it and let me know how it goes. Right now, we're going through piecemeal, and we're going through each and every little thing, but we're approving things piecemeal instead of a big entire project. So personally, I support all 3 amenities. I've never supported it in this location. And my reason for this location being I'm against it is the creek corridor. We have done work on this property to restore it, to look as, you know, open space. And I don't believe that we are upholding that. I believe that the 50 feet from the creek edge at least helps maintain this if this park is going to go through. I would not want to see 30 feet from the center of the creek. And obviously, Trustee Skumatz has, you know, gave him the same information as far as it's not just worrying about contamination in the creek. It's also protecting a wildlife corridor that was meant to be a wildlife corridor, and now we are putting people and dogs and bikes and golf in an area that was never meant to be this. So basically, I've given my points, and I hope that we can steer this in the right direction and save this overall. But I'm not liking what I see right now, because I don't think we have it in a row. I don't think we have our ducks in a row. I don't think we are ready to approve things at this point.
Other questions from the board? Trustee Gregorus?
I just have a couple of comments to make. It's interesting sitting up here on the board to have such divergent opinions about the very same thing that we're looking at the map. Jim Payne and I walked through most of the park today, including exactly where 30 feet from the center is. And believe me, there's plenty of room. It actually, it will maintain its open space feeling. It's such a wonderful park. I don't see it being inundated by, you know, it's not going to be like Times Square where we're going to have 10,000 people there at a time. It has 3 different amenities. Our town needs it, and even though it may not be presented as a regional draw, I think word of mouth certainly will bring other people from surrounding communities to it. And I really don't feel like this has been piecemeal either. I think we've talked about this as a whole. Yes, the disc golf happened a little bit earlier than we had anticipated, but it looks great. I think the couple of issues that we're talking about is 30 versus 50 feet, and having a, you know, as has been presented as far as the parking lot, we have it from the very beginning created the way that it's being presented right now, or have it a little bit smaller and then adds to it later on. So I think for the most part, this process has been as transparent as you can possibly have. I mean, we have talked about it and opened it up for months and months and months. I've gotten tremendous amounts of feedback from ProStack and from citizens, and so I'm very comfortable with it, and I'm ready to vote for it after we hear some public comments.
Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, I'd love to have some public comment regarding this issue.
Jim Payne, 2475 Clayton Circle. I chair ProStack, the Parks Rec Open Space and Trails Advisory Committee, to you, the board. I just wanted to make a couple of comments on the, first of all, I want to acknowledge that we have some people in the room who've been involved with us from the beginning, and Jody and Sean Wickers were among the first who came to us with the idea for the bike park. And of course, we have Austin Jensen and his dad are here, who was, as an Eagle Scout, led the project, and there'll be another time for more appreciation for that. But I just want to mention that, and various members of ProStack are in the room, and appreciate their coming. On the one thing on the parking, I just want to point out, it's, if some not familiar with it, recycled asphalt sounds a little onerous, but it's actually the surface of choice for most of the trailheads in the city parks and county park system. It actually gives a very natural look. It's not hard surface, but it actually properly maintained gives you good surface integrity. Easy to get across, easy to move across with bikes or kids or anything like that. And so I just want to make that comment on the parking. On the distances from the creek, first of all, the disc golf was a little bit different situation. Everybody was certainly open to a 50-foot buffer, because with the disc golf, you have the question of keeping the discs out of the creek, and you don't want players having to flag them down into the creek and so forth. So that's a little different situation from the dog park. I would also point out that initially, the initial design for the dog park had the trail, if I can get this, had the trail, well, at any rate, running down, coming in where it comes in now, and then going down and around the creek, so that the bullpen, the gate in, would be in the center, and that would have enabled us to more easily divide the park when we needed to divide it for grass restoration. So one of the things we did, which actually saved money on trails and so forth, was to move that entrance back to up here. So that eliminated all the traffic from the creek. And I should point out that there's really not there's no trail, there's no avenue, it's not something that there's any reason to, it's not even that, the creek bed is nice, but it's not even that attractive a piece of land by our open space standards back there. It borders and runs along wastewater treatment plant and Cocal's maintenance yard and so forth. So so there will not actually be a lot of traffic there by any thing that I can imagine. So I would also point out that I think, someone may know the number exactly, but there's something like 2,500 to, I don't know, over 2,500, I believe, feet of creek through this particular parcel. And all we're doing is taking a couple of hundred, I think it's 200, 250 feet along the creek, and at points it's within 30 feet, and it's not the creek isn't a straight line, so there's some areas where it's more, maybe some areas where it's a little less. But if you go out and visually, and I know you have, and I respect your aesthetic opinion on what you're trying to achieve, Trustee Williams, but if you go out and look at it, you'll see that it's what I think, and ProStack thinks, it's a very reasonable distance, and that any distance you would add to the bank or to the distance from the creek would be less valuable to the town and to residents and users than the additional footage, the additional acreage it would add to the park. So I would ask you to consider that, and I appreciate everybody who has come tonight. Thank
And
you.
I'm going to ask everybody, so thank you for addressing that particular issue. The other one that if people would weigh in on is the grass versus the gravel. I don't know if you have a thought about that.
All right, as you know, we had a booth at Chili Fest, ProStack did, and I probably talked to 60 or 70 people. And with other than a couple of people who we've had, it was overwhelmingly positive for all of these amenities. I mean, not just, yeah, it's nice, but excitement. I asked everyone I knew, everyone that obviously, well, I asked everyone if they had a dog. And I asked everybody who had a dog about grass versus gravel. And there was nobody who preferred gravel over grass. Now, I'm not saying, I've met some people who have, but no one that I asked, which may have been 30 or something people. But what's clear is, some people, what they don't want is mud. They want a nice surface. There are some people who say, well, if you're not going to keep up the grass, I'd rather have gravel. But if you don't keep up the gravel, you don't keep up the grass, either way, you're going to have mud. There are people who indicated that when it's raining, they like some area that's not grass, so they don't have to go out in the wet grass, either they themselves or the dog. So they like the idea of having a transitional area that's gravel. But there's no question, and you'll see this nationally, you'll see this anywhere you read about it, and we had expert opinion offered, friendly opinion from Randy Burkhart that Director Dominguez mentioned. He's one of the national authorities on this, and originally was a director at Louisville, by the way, and was involved in that park, and now oversees the Douglas County parks. There's no question that people prefer grass. But our option of having transitional gravel into grass, both well-maintained, as I'm sure we have, all our records are, all our experiences that we can do grass very well, it should be an ideal solution for users.
Thanks. Additional public comment?
Hi, my name is Lloyd Linnell, 3051 West Torreys Peak in Superior. I'm on the Open Space Committee, and I volunteer as just a citizen on the ProStack. I would just encourage you to vote to move forward on this park. People have worked very, very hard for quite a few years on it. The town of Superior, the people in the town of Superior will really, really benefit from it. And I think that organizations like ProStack that has come back with some recommendations that you may or may not like, they did so based upon experts and what they thought was going to be best for the community. So the 30 feet, I have walked that. I walked it again today. I think 30 feet is what we'd like. It makes the thing wider. I have two dogs. We take them to the Louisville park, and I think the good compromise, because the dog park is at the smallest size that the experts say you can have, 1.2 acres. It'll get a little bit bigger than that if you go to 30 feet, but it's still going to be on the small end of the spectrum. And so the good compromise that the experts even put a letter in your package on said that having that transition to gravel and then leading into grass, that's a great solution for a very, very small park. In terms of the parking lot, I think we've heard a lot of people say, man, the surface is going to look great. The experts say that's how many spaces we need, and there's even some discussion that says, look, if you really find that you're not using them all, then take some big trees and put them in buckets, and you can kind of break it up aesthetically. But I think you don't want to, under-engineer it. In fact, in some of the meetings that I've gone to, I like to go hiking at South Vista Trail or Flatirons Vista, and both of those on the weekends, you can't park. I mean, it's completely parked up, and you're parking on the road and walking down the road to get there, parking down on Broadway or 93. And you don't want to have that situation here. After having the public wait for 4 years, you want to have the grand opening be that people are getting ticketed and towed because there's no parking spaces. So I would just encourage you, even if it's not everything you want, I think it's a great compromise by a lot of really hard-working, dedicated people over 4 years, and you should vote yes to proceed.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Mayor, if I may, I am the contractor that you all are going to vote on today?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, just at the mic, sorry.
I didn't know if I was loud.
No, that's fine. Name and business address.
Name is Robin Riley. I'm president of Wyland Construction out of Loveland, Colorado. I've sat here through this entire thing listening, and I appreciate the real y'all just getting in on this here park. Your staff that I've talked to has been great. There has been some kind of with the numbers. Actually, for your gravel, the initial cost would be $10,500 less. The initial cost to put gravel in versus your grass. What no one has asked here is what your time frame is. I'm guaranteeing you will not use this dog park until the year 2012. I will not plant the grass until 2011 in the spring, which means you don't get to use it until 2012. So you may want to take that into consideration. For your maintenance cost, I really have a hard time with the numbers that were added on for your gravel. Peat gravel is very inexpensive, can be placed very nicely, can be worked very nicely. I've done a lot of dog parks, and I've watched a lot of dog parks. Grass with, unfortunately, urine, feces, no matter how clean, you're going to get brown spots, you're going to get nasty spots, you're going to have to redo whatnot. Your cleanliness, your health of your animals, your personnel, gravel is the way to go. It's probably not as aesthetic as you would probably want, but if you're looking for something cost-effective, still workable, but I'm the contractor. I'll put in whatever y'all want. As for your sod, that's not a problem. I gave them the price of the sod. If that's what you all choose to do, I think you'll find that the sod would be way too expensive, and it'd be a cost, against the project. Anything else that the board would like to know as a contractor, what I was thinking of, what my process was, I'd be more than entertained, but that's my thoughts on your project here. Yes, ma'am.
Is $7,000 about the estimate for the watering system?
For the sprinkler system, for the irrigation, I'll give you the exact.
That'd be great. Have you done a lot of dog parks around?
Try not to.
Okay.
The
dog parks that you've done?
There's been actually, the one city of Loveland is wood chipped.
Okay.
But they're talking about changing that because even that's not working very well.
What are they changing it to?
We don't know yet. They haven't figured that out.
Have you done gravel?
Yes.
Have you done gravel ones before? Did you?
Irrigation dog park, $7,700.
And did you do irrigation under gravel dog parks in the past?
No.
Usually no irrigation?
No.
Thank you.
I did leave, when I did my figures, I left the irrigation in case you wanted to use it for some sort of sprinkler park for the dogs to run through. I know, and I've seen dog parks with a water amenity, so if you wanted to set your sprinklers up where one pot kicked on, those that have dogs, y'all love to run through water, they could just have themselves a hellacious good time. I mean,
I like
basically, that's the thing. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
What does it take to maintain grass?
If I could just, the numbers that staff came up with for the maintenance, we actually got bids from our contractor. So I understand that this gentleman is is giving you some additional or different information than I did. However, these are the numbers that staff came up with and actually got cost estimates through our contractor to make sure that we were looking at both maintenance on gravel and grass.
And I understand and respect your position and the information that you've given forward. I just wanted to know his opinion as far as being a contractor who actually puts these in regularly. I'm just wondering, when it comes to maintaining grass, what do you recommend to your clients?
Not to put it in. I mean, that's my thing. I don't like grass because it's too costly. To me, it's too costly to maintain for a dog park. But that's my personal opinion, and only my personal opinion. There's no fact behind it other than you got to mow it, you got to maintain it, you got to cut it, you have to weed it, you have to spray it. Then you can't put the dogs on it. With gravel, it's out there. Let them have at it. And the pea gravel's small enough, it's flat enough. It doesn't. It's not going to hurt their paws.
Additional public comment?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Jody Wickers, 3487 Blanca Peak Court. And we have to leave. So I wanted to just throw in our 2 cents here. We've been behind this since it was an idea, maybe not 2005, but a couple of years ago. And we have to leave before you guys are probably going to talk about the details of the bike park. It's kind of, we're supporting that side of it, but we really support the entire thing. And everyone has brought up good questions. I'm really glad to see our town trustees are safeguarding our town and our finances so well, because obviously decisions are not made haphazardly, which I appreciate as a member of this town. But I think it's a very well-designed plan from everything I've heard from all the meetings, and our family would certainly vote for going forward. 30 feet is, about as wide as this room. That's a pretty decent distance from the creek to address that issue. As far as, Deborah, what you were saying as far as the open area, I think the whole idea has been to keep it as natural as possible. So it feels like it's still kind of an open space, maybe not completely like it is now, but to keep it feeling that way. And I agree with that. For wildlife, at least for the people or the wildlife, but to keep it as natural as possible. And it sounds like that's what's been the plan. So to end it, because we have to leave, we like it as it is, and we would hope you guys vote for it. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional public comments?
Jim Payne, 2475 Clayton Circle. I don't know what to say about that last comment. I just not the last comment, but on the grass. I just want to make the point. The timeline you have goes back to the early 2009. That's the point at which the engineers at the time and Studio Urbanista came up with the concept of putting these amenities in the location that we've been proposing. So that means that this essential layout, almost everything as you see it here, goes back now almost 2 years. But it actually started a full year before that, and the dog park started 2 to 3 years before that, when the first 400 or so petitions came in. The Wickers who just left were part of a group that, including student age and parents who came to us almost 3 years ago. In that time, we studied these amenities, and I've studied the dog park scene nationally very thoroughly. There are dog parks and there are dog parks. There are dog parks that are just chain link fence up around dirt. There are all levels of dog parks. And there are dog parks that are gravel, and there are dog parks that are, in fact, Longmont, I believe, who has a main community dog park, also has with some distributed dog parks, smaller dog parks, less than an acre, in maybe a third of an acre or so, that are around the city in different locations. And some of those are gravel. But what this is should be grass. that is what this amenity is. That is what our residents are going to want. If it is not grass, you're going to hear it from residents in this town. So I don't know what his experience, this gentleman's experience is. I understand he builds them, and that's fine. But for the town of Superior, for the Front Range, Boulder County, this is the standard. And if we deviate from it, we're going to be letting the town down. Thank you.
Additional public comments regarding this issue?
Lars Morales, 908 Maroon Peak Circle. I just want to reiterate what Jim just said, and I've done my research. Grass is the preferred surface, and with the gravel transition into the grass, that's the perfect situation. What is not used and not recommended at all is wood chips, which I heard mentioned. So that's completely out. And I would also echo what the citizen Lloyd said here, that we've asked our experts to weigh in on it, and I would recommend that we go with the experts' recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Hello, I'm Aaron Otwell. I live at 1522 Snapdragon Court. I'm a member of ProStack. I'm also a dog owner. Every time I take Walter to Louisville Dog Park, I throw some of the money over to Unleashed to go have him washed after. Wish I could have him washed here in town, but they've moved their business. I'm a strong advocate for grass. I think it reflects much better in our community to have the grass park. I think it will meet our needs better. I think it fits with the perspective of having this kind of be an open space type area. So I definitely advocate for that. I'd like to thank Trustee Skumatz, Trustee Williams. I really appreciate your diligence in really looking closely at how this is going to affect our community. I think the 30 feet will meet the standard that you're looking for, and I highly encourage you to vote yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment regarding this? Okay. Board questions and/or comments?
Yeah,
Trustee
just
Hanson?
make a last comment. I respect Trustee Williams' concerns about how this was initiated in the last couple of months. Nobody in this room liked to see that. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, and we have to move on with this park. We have overwhelming support from this community for this park. We can't handicap this park right out of the chute. We need to take into consideration everything. There's no negative impact if we go 30 feet from the center of the creek. There is negative impact if we make the dimensions smaller. So we have to go with 30 feet from the center of the creek. There's overwhelming support for grass over gravel. We've heard several people come forward, but we also know from experts that grass is preferred. We also have expert input from Studio Urbanista that the recommendation is for the size of the parking area. We need to move forward with those dimensions and that input.
Trustee Pennington?
I'm in full support and would like to add of what Chris said, and would like to add also that I am very, very delighted in the fact that Saddlebrook residents and Horizons residents eagerly support this park. That certainly, whenever you're contemplating development of any kind, it's the nearest neighbors. I had the personal experience of being out walking the disc golf course twice to have Horizons tenants or residents come out and stop me and ask when it's going to open. There's a great deal of enthusiasm among its nearest neighbors, so that really makes me happy. I was delighted to hear, Juanita, I guess I had never asked you the question before, on the fencing around the dog park. I'm delighted to hear it's split rail because it fits in so naturally then into the environment there. And certainly I had chain link in my mind before, and I really like the visual image of how split rail is going to look in that area. I would also contend to anybody who's concerned about visually impairing the creek, then just go play 9 holes of disc golf, and you've got that whole creek exposed to you on the other side there. I mean, it's wide open. there on the other side. I also very much appreciate the very last person telling me that this room, I'm not a good visual measurer, but 30 feet. Anybody? Is she correct? Is this roughly 30 feet? And that gives me that visual corridor. I walked it. I felt that 30 feet was adequate, but certainly when I look at this room, I feel the same. So I'll be voting for grass. I'll be voting for 30 feet, and I'll be voting for the 44 lot, parking lot.
Trustee Williams, trustees comments.
So I definitely do not want to compromise going closer to the creek corridor just because we want a larger park, dog park that is. And I think there are other ways to enlarge this park, whether you redesign it in a different location or you take the dog park and move it west, extend it west, and squash that circle into an oval. I think there are other options, and I'm not seeing those other options if that's what we really want, is a larger dog park, if that's what it's going to take to be more competitive or, as far as other dog parks in the area. I'm not sold on grass yet. There's a lot of different amenities I'm not sold on yet. I like all three park amenities. I just don't feel we are there yet as far as passing this with a lot of different issues that we haven't resolved.
Trustees comments.
So I guess going down my list of items, the grass versus gravel issue, I might as well just start on that one right away. It's been said multiple times, we can do grass very well. We can do grass very well when we don't have dogs running on it. We don't have dogs on any other piece of grass that we're maintained. So I don't know that we have experience with how well we can maintain grass that has dogs running on it. And I will recall, and those who've been on the board for a long time and who've been listening for a long time will recall that we had to close down football fields multiple times for wear and tear from the Mustangs and other things. You can only do so much in maintenance. Dogs, people, football players, etc., cause wear and tear on grass that needs it to sit and rest, and that's being either swept under the rug or not acknowledged. And I'm feeling the problem I'm having is that when we raise issues, we're just we're being told you're wrong, or that's not a good idea, or that's I'm not feeling like we're getting our questions to get a fair and well explained. And other than we've spent a lot of time designing this, trust us, and that's not our job to do that. We're getting advice, but we have the right and the duty to question that advice, and I'm not feeling like we're getting that respect, and that's a problem for me. And I've got a problem with the grass, and to feel like I'm always being laughed at for asking about whether can't dogs run on gravel is a problem for me, and I appreciate. Whether or not people 100% buy into what the contractor said, I appreciate that he presented an opposing opinion in a way that I thought seemed logical as well, and I wish that when I had raised these questions, I would have been treated like I was raising logical questions, not troublesome questions. And I don't often get this frustrated about these things. Okay, the 50-foot wildlife, the 50-foot space, I think is important for the wildlife. Yes, I bet we can train the wildlife to go along the Frisbee side instead of the other side, but that doesn't seem right to me. I would really like us to be able to walk along the trail and not feel like we're being crowded. And to me, I have walked it. John Nyberger, went out and measured it 30 feet, walked to 50 feet, and there was a huge difference in the feel of when it was a 30-foot corridor versus a 50-foot corridor. I think that's important. The third item I wanted to bring up is, as I guess the parking. I like to be able to flex up on the parking. Other people prefer to flex down. I just see such seas of parking around here that aren't ever used except on Thanksgiving Day in our parking here at the requirements we have seem so large that I'm troubled by large parking spaces. I would love it if we could consider being smaller and only go bigger if we really need it. If I were to have my input in designing this park, it would have a lot of bike racks. I was glad to hear that bike racks did get put in. I'd also have a climbing wall in the middle of what I would prefer as an oval space so that we can make the dog park larger. But I would like to have seen the climbing wall brought into the center of this place as well. I'm very thrilled about the volunteerism that's helped make this park affordable and the contributions we're getting from some of the contractors. I hope that we never have a process like this again. It's made me lose real faith in the process and in the information I'm getting. I'm really disturbed by the way things have gone. I think I have overwhelming support for the 3 amenities we're talking about. I don't have a huge problem with the place it is, but I do have problems with some of the fine points that I've tried to mention. I think I want us to have these amenities. I'm very interested in them. I think the only other comment I have is that we should backfill Matt Magley's position as AV person and let someone else be able to do the AV and Matt having to run over and do it. Thank you.
Job security, Matt.
I'll start by saying that when this first came up as a proposition, and I'm not sure whether it was in 2006 or after that, I was not thrilled by any of the 3 amenities because they aren't things that I'm personally interested in. I have become convinced that the town wants these amenities, so I support the park. That being said, I want to do it right, and I think I've always supported the dog park being as large as it could be unless there was evidence given that it should be smaller, and we've never had that given to us. We've gone 50 feet, Chet, I'm not sure how we even got there because we started at a larger park than that. So I support the contract with the parking lots as it is. I support at least trying to do the grass. I do have some concerns about it, but I'd support trying to do the grass, and I support approving the contract along with the proposed ceiling change that Juanita proposed of expanding to a 30-foot corridor with, say, a $10,000 ceiling on that change or something like that, so that we could get as much area as possible within the confines of the design now that we have for the dog park. I support Deb's concern and Lisa's concern. This park has been the poster child of our lack of a process for doing, and it's been very frustrating because I think we've more or less voted in favor of it 3 or 4 different times, yet we never have acknowledged that we voted in favor of it. So by voting for a contract, that's how we're doing it, and so I support that contract with the changes I suggested.
Other comments? I had a question. So, for Director Dominguez, it has to do with the grass and the timing. So, if if it were to be seeded, when do you think that you'd have a playable surface? And if it were sodded for an alternate position, how would that be playable? The timeline?
So, as part of the bid that we put out, the request for proposal, we put a timeline in that entire proposal. And with that, we had seeding happening in November, which is coming up pretty quickly here. Seeding in November, actually opening it up for usage as early as June. With the sod, if there's a sod farm available, well, if we were able to sod in the fall here, it would definitely be ready come spring. if we needed to sod in the spring, which is most likely what would happen if we changed somehow and realized that there's a cost savings and brought something back that said, hey, we can do this for X. That would happen as early as sod is available, and that could potentially be prior to June.
What did you say the date for planted grass was again?
Seeding?
No, when would it be a playable surface if it was seeded?
If it was seeded, most likely around June
Of
next year,
2011.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Okay. And my other question had to do with the bridge. So in terms of the budget, does that reflect the payment back from urban drainage for their cost sharing, or is that a total amount and then and it's not reflected in that budget?
It depends on what budget you're looking at, and there was a budget that was given.
Just the, tell the ballpark here, say just the 1.2 acres, 196,860.
That includes a bridge, doesn't include all of the work that's necessary for that bridge. It does not include the $25,000 that Urban Drainage has said that they will give this project. There's some additional work that we will certainly have with the bridge. That's in the budget item that you were given this evening, up to $25,000. When we move the project from urban drainage to what we have today, their engineers put together the specs for the bridge, so that's going to cost us a few dollars. However, again, this particular project is under budget at this time.
So do you think that factoring in whatever additional work the town would do, subtracting out the payment from urban drainage for the $25,000, do you think it's going to be less than this amount, or do you think we're going to be spending $25,000?
Oh, no, it's less than this amount.
Okay. Trustee Gross?
Yeah, just one last comment. Obviously, I've expressed how I feel, but I'm definitely in favor of the park lot the way it is right now. 30-foot corridor from the creek. And grass, although I'm interested in sod, perhaps, we have to wait. If that's a better option, and if we can do it, if it makes financial sense in the spring, that might be even better than grass. So that's my only thing, but I would.
Trustees comments?
So I just wanted to say thanks to the board for listening to my opinion and letting me air it, and that's the main thing I asked for, and to get a fair hearing on the options. If you don't agree, that's totally fine with me. I don't have a problem with that, but I do ask for questions to be answered, and we have a good discussion on it. Thank you. I'm sorry. From my point of view, I'm sorry I haven't been able to convince you more, but that's fine, and I'm going to be voting for this because we have a process here that apparently is we either accept it or we reject the whole thing. Is that correct? We don't have a piecemeal process.
Trustee Pennington?
If I may, I, as you know, really, really support good process. And I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I do want to compliment ProStack on a wonderful process. I participated in it as a resident. I watched them make the proposals to the board as a resident, and I've sat here as a trustee. And I have nothing but the highest of compliments to ProStack. These things did get murky here at the end, but all in all, my compliments to ProStack definitely, and I am certainly very happy to see us at this phase that we're at this very moment.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, Trustee Williams, do you have something else?
I just wanted to add that I, too, agree with Schumats as well. Thank you for listening to my point of view, although it's different from the majority. I just feel that I needed to raise the different concerns, and I have done my job. It's too bad I haven't convinced everyone on every point, but maybe certain points will be better because of it. So that's my comments.
So speaking about points, I just want to do, in terms of a little process here, I'm going to recommend that we vote on individual issues that seem to be raising the most consternation. So I'm going to just walk these down, and if anybody else has any other issues, let me know. So I'm going to start with the parking lot. So I'll make one comment about it. I have been hoping to have it decreased in size, but I'm actually, I think I've been convinced by the comments that have occurred here tonight, and I feel a little more comfortable knowing that it's not going to be asphalt, but it's actually recycled asphalt, which is actually different, so I'm comfortable with that. But that being the case, so who's comfortable with the size of the parking lot? So we're not voting here, so I think I see a majority
Straw
here.
voting.
This is a straw vote, yes, we're not
That's fine.
So I think we've solved that one. So now the next one had to do with the size of the dog park, and this has to do with the setback. So the question is, well, I'll raise my comments. I think 30 feet from the center is a little close. I'd be more comfortable 30 feet perhaps from the bank, but I don't feel strongly about that. So other thoughts about that? Otherwise, I'll ask if we're currently at the 30 feet from the center, I think, is where it got the majority.
Yeah, I'd say stick with 30 feet from the center, because that's ProStack's position, too.
I agree with 30 feet from the
I
center.
agree, and given split rail fencing, which looks very natural, et cetera, I am comfortable with 30 from center.
I'd like to see 30 from edge or 40 from edge or something like that.
Okay.
And we all know my position, so we'll stay.
And I think that
together.
OSAC's position is actually different from ProStack's
50.
position.
I know.
So I think that, and the ERO environmental assessment said 50 was good, so that's the only reason I brought up the 30 feet from the bank. But, so people that are comfortable 30 feet from center. So I think there's a majority there. Let's see, I think we're now to grass versus gravel. So people that want gravel. Okay, grass. All right, I think we've solved that issue. Any other particular questions that need to be addressed?
Yeah, can we add the climbing wall?
I think it's a good idea. So, Trustee Kumar, I think that's a great idea, but probably that'll have to come through a different process.
Raising it.
Yes.
For what it's worth, I do believe that has merit at a later time.
Yeah. So I think that we should not lose sight of that. So with that being the case, I think that we've solved all the particular issues, so I will entertain a motion to approve a contract then.
Have Chris do it. That's okay.
Who would like to do that? Trustee Hansen.
So I motion that we approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-
God, it's so close. 62, no, 61.
61, Series 2010, the resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a construction contract with Wineland Construction Incorporated for the construction of the Three Parks project.
Okay.
We are spending money.
Yes, we are. And is there a second?
I second.
By Trustee Gurgurus. Further discussion?
Do we need to add the definitional things 30 feet from?
I'm assuming that that's going to be in
Okay.
here, so it's
Okay.
the 30
It's the way
feet, 30 feet from center.
Okay.
It's actually, we probably should add the $10,000 contingency. So,
Or if we stay under the budget of $363,000, right?
No, the contract's not.
the contract is different, so.
Yeah, the contract's different from the budget amount, so.
You can make a friendly amendment to this, I think,
We don't
to the
normally-
original motion.
We don't normally do that, but I would
So move.
say that it's in the $10,000 contingency to the contract. Okay. Further discussion? Phyllis?
Huckle,
Yes.
Pennington,
Yes.
Skumas,
Yes.
Williams,
No.
Cirelli,
Yes.
Gregorius,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. So that brings us to item number 9, and, we didn't talk about this specifically. Do people have other questions about the Lee Bike contract? If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
I do have one question, and that is,
Sure.
my understanding was that there was going to be some design, and that over time it was going to be volunteers that were going to be doing a lot of the upkeep. That was the way it was described originally. Is that kind of still the thought?
Director Dominguez.
I'm sorry.
So
Can
the
you repeat that
question
question?
has to do with the design versus the installation versus the operations and maintenance. How much would that be done by volunteers, would you say?
So the design itself is being done completely by we like spikes. The construction of the entire bike park will be a volunteer effort during spring break.
And operations and maintenance.
And then operations and maintenance will be done in-house, and there are really not that many operational items that we need to deal with.
Because my recollection was, sorry.
Trustee Schumatz.
My recollection was that based on kind of how the park was being used and what features worked well and what things we wanted to change, that would almost be like a team of the normal users would be kind of the ones that would help refine that design and upkeep that new design kind of over time. That was what I remember hearing earlier.
And that was way back when, and that was one of the things
the plan?
That's one of the things that was discussed. The particular way that this facility will look, we'll have a pump track. So a pump track is a pump track. It's an oval
All I'm saying is
type
I'd like to
track.
have volunteer ownership.
I'm sorry?
All I'm trying to say is I would like to have volunteer ownership.
So, and I'll just make one comment. I'm certain that this will change. The one thing that I know with parks is that they always evolve and change over time. I suspect that the users are going to recommend some changes. They don't like X, they want Y. That will go to ProStack. ProStack will make a recommendation, and I'm sure there'll be some volunteer activity as well as some staff time. So,
And it's not necessarily a situation where you're going to have people with shovels out there constantly that are changing the intent of the designed park.
Mr. Payne, did you have something else?
Just quickly on that. There are going to be, for example, the Wickers family that was here, they were part of the original group. They want to be involved in it. Andy Wing, who's one of our ProStack members, who's a cyclist, is mountain biker, and is the liaison with staff, and so he'll be getting other citizens, and I think he's in touch with the high school, has started a mountain bike club. I think they're interested in helping. So there'll be a lot of town involvement.
Okay, thanks.
And
Trustee Williams?
how many feet is the edge of the bike course from the creek corridor?
It's still 50 feet.
Okay. In all points, all the way around the two sides?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, so, and I think that you made notice in the packet here that there is some mitigation for drainage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right, okay. All right, thanks. So with that, I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Gregorus?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution number R-62, Series 2010. A resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with Lee Likes Bikes, LLC, for design services and construction management for the bike park at the Three Parks project.
Motion by Trustee Gregorus. Is there a second? Trustee Hansen, further discussion? Seeing none. Phyllis?
Pennington?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Williams?
Again, I like the amenity, but not the location, so no.
Cirilli?
Yes.
Gregorus?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Muckle?
Yes. So that brings us to an end. It's been a long process. Thank you. I think it's been brought up by several trustees that this was long and drawn out, and that many people participated in this, ProStack and people that were even on ProStack and community members. I think Wally Waligorski, if I remember this correctly, maybe initiated the dog park going back many years. So I think the community is going to be proud of this, and I think it's going to be well used. So congratulations to everybody. Trustee Pennington.
Now that it's approved, is Three Parks the permanent name, or can we name this something?
I'm certain that we can come up with a new name.
Something more contest. Okay.
Pennington Park.
Pennington Park.
I think ProStack Park's better than that.
There you go. All right, so that brings us to the end of 8 and 9. That brings us to 10. So that is an executive session regarding personnel matters pursuant to CRS 24-6-42, Print 4, Print F. to discuss the process for filling a town manager position and the salary for the interim town manager, to hold a conference with the town's attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to CRS 24-6-402(4)(b), and to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, develop a strategy for negotiations, and/or instruct negotiators pursuant to CRS 24-6-402(4)(e). Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Trustee Skomas. Is there a second? Trustee Williams. All in favor? That's unanimous. We're in executive session.